Good evening and welcome to the Gin and Tonic show on Friday, the 24th of August, 2018. A warm welcome if you are just joining us, and a welcome to everybody in the chat, and of course a warm welcome to my always reliable and knowledgeable co-host. Stop spamming. How are you, my good sir?
Very well. Good evening, good morning, good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to Gin and Tonic show.
Yeah, today we'll be chatting about morality, that's nice, morality and ethics in Islam, and it'll be with Michael from Speaker's Corner. Michael is a regular visitor there. Many of you will know him. You'll recognize his voice. He's in a number of videos. He's done some study on this, and he'll be talking about this topic. He'll be joining us a little bit later, not too late, but a short while from now. He's on his way, and he's got something to sort out, so he'll join us shortly, and then we'll get chatting. He will present. We'll actually go through it because I talked to Michael yesterday to just understand exactly what he's going to be presenting, and he was using some philosophical terms, and I said, okay, so I think maybe it'll be useful if I or Stops asks you what that means, because obviously you're an expert, but people may not necessarily know what you're talking about. So it'll be more of a discussion presentation than a straight presentation where we all keep quiet. So he'll say something, and then if Stops and I want to clarify something for the audience or ask a question, then we'll do it that way. So it'll be a discussion led by him talking about morality and ethics, and that'll be the main topic. So,
but are you telling us that it's going to be an educational Gin and Tonic show?
Well, I think that we learn something or somebody else does, apart from entertainment. So let's put it that way. Let's hope that we can all learn something. And if you are a viewer that wants to join us, particularly if you're a Muslim who has something to say on the topic or a separate topic, then let us know in the chat. And you need to friend me on Facebook, and we'll probably have one of our Muslim friends as Abdul Aziz joining us. He's from America. He's more sort of like Saracen, I would suggest. He sort of feels like you can be a little bit more, there's a bit more latitude with interpretations, etc. So we've had him on before. He may well join us a little bit later after, or even maybe perhaps during Michael's presentation.
And Rob, let's just do a quick shout out for Characters Over Everything. Hilarious. It's a lot of fun. Go and watch it if you haven't watched some of the characters in Speaker's Corner. And I think it's very well made. I enjoy this kind of humor.
Yeah, so let me send a couple of links into the chat here. So if you haven't heard about it, it came on my feed. It's called Characters Over Everything. And obviously it's a spoof on Content Over Everything, but it's kind of a spoof with some of the characters. And the person himself, whoever this gentleman is doing the voices as well. So they're short little videos, but they're quite amusing because you'll hear it and you go, yes, I know exactly this. Even if I close my eyes, I know who's speaking if you're familiar with any of the regulars from Speaker's Corner. So it's a small channel, but hopefully I'll be doing a lot more. And yeah, we can look forward to some of that. Speaking of which, Stops, bit of entertainment, etc. Maybe let's do that now then before we do the crazy comments. Maybe you can share your screen and just show. This is a shout out to Walid, who is VideoVids. I was saying to him, if you haven't seen it, he's kind of hit the big time in the sense that one of his videos where he pretended to be different characters like Jordan Peterson, Richard Dawkins, I don't know if it was Majid Nawaz, but a couple of other well-known people, and Zakir Naik, obviously. This got picked up, and you'll see a clip there. Hopefully Stops will be able to do that, where Majid Nawaz is holding his phone and they're listening. So it's Douglas Murray, Majid Nawaz, and Sam Harrison. They're listening to a little bit of his video and they are chuckling away. So Stops, if you've got that, you can add that. And good evening to Raj. How are you, Raj?
Yeah, I'm okay. Just waiting to make an announcement. Let a few more people come in, and then I'll tell them both.
Cool. All right, we'll do this.
I don't actually know how to add this because this is a Facebook video. How does one add a Facebook video?
Oh,
Rob.
Presume. Hello?
Did you hear me, Rob?
I got it.
Oh, hello, Stops.
Hi, Raj.
Yes, I can hear you. Yes, go ahead.
Are you going to go
Can you
over
hear
the
me?
video of Adnan, Rashid, and
Are you
James? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear. It's more important.
Yeah, I can. You're cutting out. But are you going to go over those videos?
Is he hearing me? Can you hear me, Stops?
You're going in and out.
Yeah, you're going in. But there's a video of Adnan, Rashid, and James from Speaker's Corner where I'm not joking. It's a 10-minute video of Adnan Rashid propagating slavery. I don't know what to say about it. It's very, very crazy. So it's disturbing to say the least.
I will have to somehow do something different because he doesn't allow me to do this.
What do you need? I'm back. I just wanted to check something. Sorry, say that again, Raj. You were asking, are we going to go over a video?
Yeah, there's a video of Adnan Rashid speaking to James from Speaker's Corner, and it's around 10 minutes, but it's Adnan Rashid basically justifying slavery under Islam. And it's probably 10 minutes of the biggest headache I've ever had, because it's very difficult to listen to Adnan Rashid when he's trying to justify the unjustifiable. You probably can't do it today, but if you can do it next week or something.
Can you pop the link into the chat there for us?
Yeah. I'll put the link in. I don't know if James is coming on today. Poor James, he had a terrible time with that Adnan Rashid. Let's have a look.
Was this
I'm just going to find it. Yeah, this was on Sunday. It's a very short video, but it's a very telling video.
I haven't seen that yet, so maybe you can send that over. But if James is listening and he wants to join, then obviously he's welcome to do so. And again, if anybody else is of interest wants to join, then they can do that. So Stops, how are you getting on there? Are you able to get that to work?
Okay, if I want to do the one thing he's okay, I need to do this differently because he is telling me that I need to create an account to do this.
Oh dear. Okay. Well, while you're doing
I've got
that,
it here.
Oh, you have.
Yeah, I've got it here. That's cool. Can you see what I am presenting at the moment?
Yep.
Okay. All I need to do now is play. Okay. Are you ready? But I will not have sound.
Why not?
Can you hear the sound?
No, and it's quite jumpy.
Oh, where is this?
No, we can't. We don't have sound on that. I wonder. I don't think I can share it. If you're not friends with Armin and Navabi, we'll be having him on in 2 weeks' time. So friend him on Facebook and you'll see this video. He shared this video, but I think if you're not friends with Armin, then you may not be able to hear or even see the video. But essentially, if you, it's video vids on there, and he's playing different characters. So if you go to the video vids channel, you'll see he's playing the different characters, and this is the video with Jordan Peterson.
Can you hear the video
now? No.
Okay, so this doesn't work.
Okay, no worries.
I need to, because he says as soon as I go to, hang on, let me just stop this, and if I go here, this is what I get. So I for some reason I can go to Facebook, I can load everything, but then he says he wants me to, I don't know, log in or something like this, because underneath here I have the video.
Yeah, I don't
know why I need to log in here before I can see this. I can't log in here. I don't know what he is opening here. If I go and say, please give me the link of that, why he doesn't go to my account where I am logged in, I have no idea what is stopping this from working. I have no idea.
All right, not a worry. Yeah,
but
that's all.
I tried. Sorry, guys.
All good.
Rob, I've sent you the video. It's only 10 minutes. You might want to go through it. It's a bit of a headache.
When did you send it to me? I don't see.
I send it to your Facebook.
Oh, okay.
So it's just like 10 minutes of Adnan Rashid justifying slavery with James.
Okay.
How many people are in there?
Okay, we'll definitely come back to that. If not tonight, then possibly in one of the others. We'll see how far we get tonight with everything else. So I'm going to go to the crazy...
Can I just say something? Before I go, if you just give me, I just want the viewer count to go up a bit. I just want to say about Tan coming on to my show tomorrow. And if anyone wants to join, if you want to join or Stops wants to join, you can come in as well. It will be tomorrow at 4 p.m. But I'll announce it when there's around a little bit more people. Again, then I'll leave.
Okay, I mean, You don't
What
have to.
channel is that? Just put a link in the channel somewhere.
Yeah. I'm gonna write it in here as well. So I might just chip now then. So tomorrow at 4 p.m. I will be having Tan on my show, and he has told me it's likely my channel will be shut down with the amount of hate that I'm going to get from it. So I think it's going to be quite interesting. But for free speech, I think it's worth it. So anyway, if Stops are going to come on, you want to speak to him, or Rob, just tell me and I'll send you a link. Anyway, I'm going to be shooting now. If you can go over that video at some point, either today or next week, that would be great.
Cool. Thanks for dropping by. And yeah, so you say 4 p.m. tomorrow. If we're around, then listen in, or see if we can hit you up to join in, see what's what.
Yeah.
Cool
It'll be
stuff.
funny.
Thanks so much.
Anyway, Stops. Anyway, Rob, take care. I'm off.
Cheers, man.
Cool. Okay, so there you've heard it. They'll be having a chat.
Hi, Hassan. The point was that the video is working, but the audio is not. It's always a problem with the audio, which is why I bought this module to actually go and play these things. But now he said, well, I can't play this because it's on the web. It's not a YouTube video per se, because YouTube, it plays off the cuff. But for web, you need to install something. I managed to do that, but I think you need to restart the whole thing before it works properly. And I didn't do that beforehand. So it's just a matter of getting everything right set up.
Yeah.
It's the own stupidity.
No worries. I sent that to you last minute anyway, so maybe it's a bit of a technical thing. Cool. All right. We've got around 57 viewers or 45 watching. I'm not quite sure how that works. I've got a different number of viewers in one and the other. And only 7 thumbs up. I mean, if you could give us a thumbs up for the show, we'd appreciate that. That helps it push it up the ranking so people can see the live show. We can get more viewers. That means you can, interact with people on the chat. And if more people join and listen, maybe there's more people who want to join in and actually join us on the show. Particularly if you're a Muslim and you want to join us, then the more we can be seen by Muslims, potentially the more likely it is that we'll have a Muslim that might want to join us.
Yeah, but Rob, you need to sell this properly. You need to say, oh, girl, show some love here. Give us some thumbs up, man.
There we go. I left that to you to do. Cool. Alrighty. So let's share the screen and share a few comments, as we always do. Sometimes educational, but always entertaining, if nothing else. So where are we? Let me just bring that up, present that to everybody. There we go. Okay. Stop sent me this, so maybe you can.
Yeah. Okay. This is something that we've talked about before. Okay. So this is a group on Facebook. It's a group of it's consisting of Muslim apologists who. And I can't even remember how many. It's not so many, but it was fascinating because they say that we Muslims announce our challenge for atheists all over the world, and they don't say what the challenge is. So I wrote to them and I said to them, okay, I'm interested in your group, but I don't quite understand what the challenge actually is. And why is it a challenge for atheists and deists and agnostics? What about theists of other, denominations? Why not them as well? And I asked them some questions, but they could never actually answer my questions. So they said, well, the challenge is to show anything wrong in the Quran. So I said, well, that's easy. What does it do? What is going to happen? Well, just do it, and that's it. And I said, okay, but what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with the information? What is the effect going to be if I give you something that is wrong in the Quran? What the hell is wrong with that? What are you going to do about it? Well, just give us no answer at all. They were not interested. They have no clue what it is. They want to get on their script. Oh, you're saying this? No, of course not. Are you stupid? You're such an idiot. You don't know this. So I said, okay, let me do it. So I sent them the first one, sent them a mistake. And then the irony is, can you go to the second one of these, please, Rob?
Yep.
Because the irony is, they're going here and saying, we established this group, okay, from our belief that the existence of God is the largest axiom supported by a myriad of evidence. And so we announced our challenge to all the people, not because we are smarter, but because we are backed by the absolute truth. And then they say later, and I highlighted this, we hope they don't abuse their fellow non-Muslims. So I presented them with a mistake in the Quran, which is not difficult at all. And they then said, well, he doesn't believe in absolute truth. So we don't need to answer, because the claim that there is something wrong in the Quran depends on absolute truth. And if you don't have absolute truth, we don't need to respond to this, because this is a nonsensical claim. So I said, come on, guys, what is wrong with you? Okay, I gave them the next mistake. And no answer, the next mistake, no answer. So I made it a habit then of posting, like a mistake a week or something, or every couple of days, I can't remember. And that's it. So they then did not put them out. And then I came to them, I said, listen, what's your problem? I mean, you're challenging people. I rose to the challenge, and I gave you some mistakes. So what's wrong with that? So what he did was, okay, this is a person who does not accept anything, so he is wrong, and that's it. And he closed it, he locked it, no further comments available. And then Rob came in and said, listen, guys, what are you doing? You're saying you hope you don't abuse fellow non-Muslims, but that's exactly what you're doing. Because all he did is gave you what you asked for, and now you're saying, well, we're not going to answer. That's intellectually dishonest. So they then came, and now they started discussing this, and they came up with the most stupid things. And this is the point that we're trying to make today, that they will then resort to lies, deception, and anything that has, well, nothing to do with morality and ethics. And this is what I hope to show, that as soon as Islam moves into a brain, if you are indoctrinated and you're not strong enough to get out of it, you are going to succumb. You are going to go into this mode where you are unable to answer in a rational, in a structured, in a reasoned way to a challenge. All you can do then is play, silly games and go throw up some red herrings and go and divert and just hope for the best that this will go away. And of course, this is what happened, because I carried on every couple of days sending them a mistake in the Quran until they blocked me. And that's the only thing that they have. They only have censorship. They don't care about morality and ethics. They don't care about honesty or anything like that. They just block you. And I think, Rob, they blocked you as well, right?
No, I left. I went, okay, if this is the way you guys behave, then there's no point in being here. And I challenged him to come on the show and defend his points, and I wouldn't hold my breath for him coming on the show, and I wouldn't. It would be an actual infinity before he came on the show.
Yeah.
So,
and I just saw somebody who responded to me. The last post about the ants were answered quite well. No, they were not. Because I knew what the answer was going to be, and I said already, you cannot have a discussion between an ant and a human being. He said, well, you don't know the latest science because ants can talk. And no, this is exactly what I thought was going to happen. So I said, you cannot have a discussion between an ant and a human, which is what is happening in the Quran, because, and this is the point where they are so incredibly dishonest, I pointed out to them, I put the sentence from the Quran in front of them, which shows that one ant is talking to the other ant, and Solomon actually, he reacts to what the ant is saying, which means that he can understand what the ant is saying. And the ant can distinguish Solomon from the other men around him, which is totally impossible from a scientific point of view. So I said to them, number one, apparently an ant can distinguish one person from another, which is wrong. And then you can have a discussion, which is not wrong. And all he did, he ignored the first point. And then he says, well, you are stupid because ants can talk. No, they can't. There are some species amongst ants which have some sort of a hook or something where they can rub their legs against and they can make 3 or 4 sounds. That's not having a discussion, that is not speaking Arabic, that is not articulating a language a human being can hear. And all he said is, yeah, we have the equipment available to us today that we can hear this using a microphone. Yes, but these are sounds. This is not language. My point was that Solomon heard the ant speaking to the other ant and reacted to it. In other words, he could understand it. And this is what is scientifically wrong. You can always claim it's a miracle, sure. So he did not answer anything quite well, not at all Not one bit. Okay, John, self-swimming is gay. That's the absolute truth. Yeah, sure.
And also somebody brought up about the trees talking, but this is anthropomorphizing non-humans, as you say. There may be some biological information that, again, even information is not a good word. There may be some biology. They're sending something via, some kind of fluid, liquid, or some other methodology.
It's a smell. When they are being attacked by, there are certain plants, when being attacked by a certain, a worm, then they send out a tobacco. Sorry, it's tobacco plants. Yeah, that's what it was. Tobacco plants send out a specific smell, which is being picked up by the others, and then they bring out a mint kind of nicotine. They increase the nicotine output, and this is what happens then to the bugs that they die. And this is the kind of the level of communication. So it's absolutely it's a straw man, absolutely, when I'm talking about a communication process between an ant and a human, and so this has nothing to do with it.
Yeah. Cool.
How would you explain Aesop and the ant and the cricket? Yeah.
All right, this is one you sent me that I sent you. So again, in one of these groups, somebody asked, so you're an atheist, huh? Do you have scientific evidence that God does not exist? I think I actually did reply to this guy before I left or was kicked out of whichever group this was. And I said it depends on which God you are talking about and what claims you make about the God. So if you claim that this God has interacted in this world in some way and has twiddled the particles or done something where he suspended or changed the laws of physics or done something that we know is not against the laws of nature, let's call it, then yes, we could say, hey, here's a claim that you've made, a claim that we can investigate via science, and we see no evidence that it is the case. And in fact, we see evidence that it's not the case, in which case that claim, if it pertains to your God, would be false. I didn't go into that level of depth, but I asked which God and what are the attributes. So it depends on the sort of God. But of course, the whole thing that a lot of these guys confuse is that, we need to show that God does not exist. Well, we can argue that there's good reasons why we think their particular God does not exist, but that may not address all other types of gods. So it depends on the sort of God you're talking about. And again, I've said to people, go watch one of our previous shows where we had Ozymandias Ramesses on that talked about the reasons for atheism, the positive reasons that you can give as an atheist. Cool.
And I am not absolutely 100% certain that I am not an Allah, because according to the Sims, I am an Allah, because I have created them, I have created their world, I make them do everything that I want. Well, I don't make them worship me, but I give them everything from me. So for them, I'm an Allah.
Cool. All right, so we're going to move on here. So again, in Facebook, this was a conversation with a gentleman by the name of Michael Niam and our favorite friend, Kenny Bomer. And Michael said, very well, Kenny, if I choose Islam, can I still listen to the Beatles, my favorite music, accept macroevolution, and remain friends with atheists and Christians? And Kenny Bomer said, of course you can. Now, either he didn't read the comment or he doesn't know what macroevolution is. But if he accepts macroevolution, then that's problematic for his worldview, which claims that, the first humans were magically created out of or not from previous humans. And so that's a bit problematic. So I thought that was interesting that he could say that. And I did comment on that and said either he hasn't read the comment or he doesn't know what macroevolution is.
But it's also the Quran says don't take the non-believers as friends.
Yes. So again, if he's listening, how is he going to reinterpret that? Oh, that was only for a time of war, probably. I mean, this is the favorite apology. Anything negative in the Quran is only defensive in a time of war.
And listen to the Beatles, of course.
Yes, I mean maybe that's the war chant or something. You go to battle listening to the Beatles. And so actually here it is. I replied. So I said, Michael, so you can accept macroevolution, which contradicts the Quran. Either Kenny does not know what that means, or he's not paying attention. And then my favorite co-critic here, who's got a lot more expertise on evolution, put in a couple of videos where a couple of the people are saying that no, the Quran and macroevolution don't coexist together. So
incompatible.
Yes, indeed. So I think maybe Kenny needs to go back to the drawing board on that one. This one, you're going to love this one. You're going to love this. I'm going to read this first and then leave it to the commenters. So Kenny said to me, Rob, Speaker's Corner, attacking the person instead of addressing the topic is an ad hominem. You've just done it again, insulting me as if I can't understand, yet the reality is that you are nowhere near close to being as intellectually gifted as I am. This is true now. He's not trolling, by the way. My reading comprehension is over 98% and has been on every comprehension test I've taken throughout my life. My IQ is well above average, always scoring in the mid-150s. And just for interest, for those who are watching, if you score 140 and above, I'm not sure if you're considered a genius, but you are, stops because you're in that field. What is it when you score more than 150?
No, it doesn't work like that.
Oh, it doesn't work.
Mensa, okay, I always take Mensa. I just know Mensa. I'm not an expert on any of this. I just happen to know that if you belong to the 2%, to the 2 highest percent, now intelligence is increasing every decade by 2 IQ points, I think it is. I don't remember exactly how much it is. And this is why they're always making it relative to the average. You see, this is the big point. It's always relative to the average, and it's always depending on who is doing what at the time and what the level is at that stage.
Okay, well, what is the current cutoff level for being a genius, considered a genius? Not 140 then? Is 160?
No, 140 is not uncommon. I think it would be around 170s, 180, and when anything over 200 is way above. But genius, I don't know if there is a cutoff for IQ. The thing is that IQ, I think IQ is hopelessly overrated. Okay, IQ just helps you to connect the dots. It doesn't tell you about overall comprehension abilities. It doesn't do anything to make you more anything of anything. It just helps you to understand things quicker than others, than those with half that IQ, for example. But it's not a big deal. I think IQ is overrated hopelessly. Okay, so there we go. So, and then you think you're smarter than me. I've never claimed that I'm smarter than somebody else. What I do claim, and that I'll stand by, is that I do have some psychological education that does put me above average, but that's only because I've learned it, not because was born with that. So that is one thing that I will claim that I have, is some psychological education above and beyond sort of the lay person. But I'm certainly not an intellectual or an academic by any stretch. And the other thing is, you're making an excellent point here, because you're born with this, okay? This is not something that you cultivate. This is not something that, you can practice it, and you can increase your IQ points by practicing, because the brain is a little bit like a muscle, so you can train it. But the point, and this is what he's stupid, okay? Really, I think that Kenny Boma is stupid, all right? Because by bragging, saying that my IQ is scoring in the mid-150s, and then he displays such a high level of inadequacy, makes it even worse if he thinks that he has 150 and then he spouts all this nonsense. If he were to come across in a rational way, in a structured way, he would have good arguments, and you would think, wow, this guy has thought about these things and is making some good points. Then I would start even considering this. But the way that he talks, the way that he brings things across, the way he talks absolute nonsense, and then claims that it's in the 150s, that makes it even worse. It shows how deluded this guy really is, and how in this feeling of inadequacy that he has, that he feels inferior and defect for some reason, that he has to brag and try and make up for it. This is telling in my eyes. Yeah, I think the people who are the smartest don't have to toot their own trumpet when they put forward their ideas or put an argument forward. You can immediately tell, like we've had Ozzy Mendes on here, very smart individual. When you listen to him, you listen to the way he articulates himself, what he understands. He's never going to go say, hey, it's the exact opposite. It's the most humble people are normally the smartest. The person who doesn't say anything, but you just listen to what they have to say about a particular topic, or when they put forward an argument, that says it all. That actually is, as you've quite rightly said, displayed. When you have to tell everybody how much you've studied or how much you know, or that other guy, Sadullah Ali, tells everybody his qualifications, or Reza Arslan tells everybody how he's qualified. As you quite rightly say, that's a lower level of psychological development, because you now have a need to try and defend your qualifications as if that's going to
make an argument for you. I don't care if you're a professor or if you're the world's best, you can still be wrong on something else. And even if you are the world's best, that still means you could be wrong on something. So I care what somebody thinks and what they say rather than the qualifications. Now, the qualifications will help, but they could still be wrong. So tooting your qualifications doesn't impress me particularly much. I want to hear what you've got to say. Say again?
Reza Aslan.
Yeah, there we go. I mean, you've heard that many times. I think somebody did a video on it as well, where he kept telling everybody all the qualifications he's had, but then he opens his mouth and he makes statements, and you're going, well, that doesn't sort of add up as you've said here. So there we go. And here's just something, because people have asked me, so I thought this is not a crazy comment per se, but it's a comment. So this is to Shabir Yusuf, because for those of you who don't remember, about 2 months ago, he was at Speaker's Corner and I was there, and Stops was sort of on Skype, and he was in my ear, in my AirPod earpiece, and we asked him if he wanted to have a conversation around the numerical error in the Quran, the inheritance error. He's like, no, I don't want to do that now. You can go watch the video if you think I'm paraphrasing inaccurately. No, I don't want to do that now. Let's do it on the Jinn&Tonic show. Send me the details. So I sent him the details. Said, here it is. I linked to Stops' video. I said, here's our claim. Here's the video, etc. And I didn't hear back from him, and I left it for a month. And then somebody reminded me, and I did email. And so he's eventually come back and he said, apologies for not responding earlier. I've just been very busy. I will respond to your apparent error in the Quran, and then we can consider an appearance on the show thereafter. Kind regards, Shabir. So maybe we will, but I've put it out there now so we can see that he's going to study this. And clearly, if he's got a very strong case, then he would probably, I think, easily want to come on the show and just sort of demolish this claim so we don't make it anymore. I would think, though, if he doesn't have a particularly strong argument, we may not see him on the show. So I would think that somebody would come on if they go, oh, yeah, I've got a strong argument. I'll put these guys in their place, or I will, put this to bed once and for all. So that might be an indication. So if he does come on the show, then perhaps we can expect a strong defense. If he doesn't come on, then perhaps we can take it that there isn't a very good defense on that. But anyway, I've put it out there for you. You can see all of that. So there you go.
It's we will consider, not him. We.
Yeah, I don't know who the we is there. The royal we, maybe. If he wants to bring a friend, he can phone a friend or bring a friend. I don't mind him bringing somebody else on. After all, it's me and Stops there, so maybe that's intimidating for people, quote unquote, 2 against 1. But if you've got the truth on your side, it doesn't matter if he gets a panel of 100. You would still, if they're intellectually honest, then they're going to, listen to your argument and take it at face value. Then it doesn't matter. If you've got a strong argument, it doesn't matter how many interlocutors you deal with. And as you'll see in Speaker's Corner, for example, there's often more than one interlocutor. They all jump in saying this, that, and the other thing. So one should be used to that. Good. And finally, this was a video that with myself and Kalam and Rajiv, who's this guy with the black hat. And this fellow, I'm not sure his English is particularly good, but he said here, the story of Aisha is not exist in the Quran. It is only exist in the fabricated hadith. I challenge anyone to prove to me hadith are real. Show me original written proof of hadith. So maybe this is a Quranist. Quran is the oldest book exist on this planet. The only way to know who was Prophet Muhammad. You have to study the Quran only. So there we go. A well thought out response with, I'm sure, historical evidence to back up that the Quran is the oldest book. And if what he means by the oldest book is, it existed in heaven alongside Allah, well, that wouldn't have been on this planet then, would it? So I think it's pretty clear that it's not the oldest book on the planet, apart from all the bad grammar and English and so on.
Rob, just quickly say hi to Plato Kant.
Oh, is he here? Sorry. Yes.
No, you can't see this. That's why I'm telling you.
Oh, okay. He's saying to me the link is not working here. Let me just resend him the link. I just wanted to make sure that I think that was the last of the. Yes, that was the last one. So good. So we'll. Oh, let me just get my screen here. Stop that. Get rid of that. Give me a moment, Michael. I will be with you in 1 second here. Just going to stop presenting that. Stop. There we go. Okay, so if there's any comments there, Stops, you can read that out. I'm just going to resend Michael the link here so that he can join us.
Oh, I wasn't watching now. This is all about fashion now. Even top Islamic scholars will not touch inheritance questions. I don't think Shabir Yusuf will. Well, the thing that you see, I opened up this Facebook group, challenging Muslims. Show me something that is correct, the opposite of what this other Muslim group is. And believe it or not, nobody has come forward and brought anything convincing. One thing I use as an example: don't come and say that inheritance or something is correct. This is a mistake, so please don't do that. Now, the way that, for example, hijab responded was simply saying nobody thinks that this is a mistake. Nobody thinks that this is any problem. It's not being used. It's not there. It's not a problem. So we won't address it. So it's just sheer arrogance that stops them from talking about this. Because as soon as you go and just sort of explain this a little bit, and you just go into the details, it's over. It's done. You can't do anything. It's a mistake. It is there. You can't argue with it. That is why people don't address it. And I think Shabir is arrogant enough to try and do that, because Rob went to him and said, "Well, there's an error in the mistake in the Quran. Can you address it?" And he gave him the inheritance error. So this is one error that he will have to address, or he's going to say, "Okay, I'm not going to come on the show. Yes, I agree, it's an error. There's nothing we can do about it."
Yeah, welcome, Michael. Good evening. I think I can hear you, or I heard you for a moment. Good evening. Are you there now?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can indeed. I might turn you up a
Okay.
little bit so we can hear you a bit louder. I could do it on the show.
Excellent.
Yeah? There
Well,
we go.
hello, Robs. Hello, Stops. Hello, everybody else.
Hey.
I am sure we have the usual suspects out there.
Yes, indeed.
So
Good evening.
let's-
Welcome.
thank you for welcoming me on the show.
So just tell us a little bit about yourself, Michael. For those who don't know, obviously people who follow the Speaker's Corner videos will recognize your voice and probably will know what you look like. But give us a little bit of history. How did you get down to Speaker's Corner? You know, what is your view on, you know, religion, etc. And then once people know a little bit about you, whatever you feel free to share in public, go ahead and do, and then we can get into the topic.
Okay, well, so I first started going to Speaker's Corner in 1994.
Goodness.
And I didn't even know about it. I was in Marble Arch and I saw the crowd. I thought, what's going on here? And I just loved it. It was just crazy. That was my first day there, and I had already been studying or reading about religion, Catholicism, and Islam. My father grew up in Morocco, and I read the Quran. I think the first time when I was 12 years old. He spoke Arabic. He was not a Muslim, and I would ask him, "Is it any different in Arabic?" And we would both have a laugh about it. And then I was there in Speaker's Corner, and I thought it was amazing that there was a whole mix of people. But at the time when I first started, it was very different to now. We obviously know that. So there was a politicians and so on and so forth. And this Jay Smith was there. He was, and all this. I thought it was amazing that there was some people that were really willing to attack Islam the way they were doing, because there was always the born again Christian preachers in Leicester Square. But they really weren't their defend. They really didn't have much of a defense towards Islam. And I didn't go for a couple of weeks, and then I went back, and then in a way I got hooked onto it. It's just such a great place. And at the time, I was a trying Catholic, shall we say. I really wasn't convinced on. I was if you like to say, an atheist Catholic. And by about the year 2000, I stopped going to church, and there's where I started studying philosophy. Did a BA in philosophy, and then did a master's. Eventually, I completed a PhD. And I kept on going for all these years. Other than the fact that I've made friends, it's just a great place to have a good argument, had a good discussion. Sometimes they're awful, we all know that, and sometimes they're just fantastic. Sometimes they're exactly the same thing you've been arguing for the last 12 years. or 10 years or 20 years. Other times they're not. But lately it's changed a lot. Now my area of interest is the idea of morality and ethics. That this whole idea of, if you're an atheist, you cannot be moral. If you're an atheist, you don't have morality. If you're an atheist, you have no basis for morality. I think this is something that as atheists we need to challenge far more. As simple as that. And I feel a lot of atheists, the minute they're told this, they back off. I'm not saying they don't know how to challenge it, but I feel they don't know enough how to challenge it. I don't feel they have enough tools to say, actually, your argument makes no sense. The idea that if you're an atheist, you have no morals, or the idea that only because you're a theist of some sort, you have a higher moral standing or a higher moral teaching. Just because you have a basis for morality, or you claim to have a basis for morality, somehow now you're on another level to the atheist, to me is nonsense. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But I twist that a little bit. I automatically say, fine, I don't need morality. Morality to me is irrelevant to an extent.
What is it?
Yeah, so I think at that point,
Okay.
that's a good sort of starting point. Maybe you can share the difference. And I did say to the people that this will be, you can sort of lead the presentation, and maybe Stops and I'll ask you some questions, as opposed to you just doing a straight on presentation, because we'll be listening. And on behalf of the viewers, either we won't know something or I won't know something. I won't speak for Stops. And then I'll either ask it for myself so I can get clarity from you, or perhaps I'm thinking maybe the viewers don't know what you're talking about. So maybe you could start by just outlining the difference between morality and ethics as you see it.
Yes, definitely. So we have morality, the moral law. So morality in itself, the term morality comes from the Greeks, and the morality is what Aristotle, Plato, and Socrates consider. Not Aristotle. Let me rephrase that. Plato and Socrates saw as rules that were binding, they were categorical, and they were a priori. Now, there's a lot there, so I'll unpack that very quickly. They were laws of behavior that we could not question, i.e. hence categorical. We could not critique. So Plato was a big one on this. Socrates, not so much, because he did say you have to question everything. However, he accepted that the moral law came from an outside source, an outside being. They had what they call the forms, the theory of forms. We don't need to explain that because it's irrelevant. But what is relevant is that they believed that moral laws were basically laws that were unquestionable. They were binding on us, and they were before us. They came from a source greater than us. Now, automatically, as an atheist, that there's a problem here. What do you mean a something greater than us? What do you mean outside of us? So the moral law can come from your parents to an extent, from the government, but ultimately the moral law, the religious say, comes from God. So the fact that it comes from God, it's good and we can't question it. Well, what they really mean is you can't question the lawgiver, because I can question the moral law. I do it all the time. We all do, I hope. But here came Aristotle. Now, I'm not going to go into the history of philosophy because we don't need to do that. But Aristotle very quickly said, no. What we look at is how the moral law is applied in everyday situations. Because what is applicable in one situation may actually be evil in another situation. So we have to look at it according to the situation of that is needed. So he came out with the term etica, ethics, as we have now. And he said the ethics are the judgment we make on the moral law. So, for example, Aristotle said it's true that lying is wrong, but there's sometimes where lying is the only good thing we could do. Now, the religious have to disagree with this, because you can't have God saying, do not lie, and then saying, up, but sometimes it's okay to lie. But as an atheist, I say, no, I will lie if it's a benefit at that given moment. Ethics is a hypothetical situation according to the moral law. Therefore, it is us who look at what the situation occurs on our everyday lives and how are we going to behave. And also the purpose of ethics is to bring about the maximum happiness and the least pain. Morality is not concerned with happiness or pain or pleasure or least pain. Morality is concerned with duty. What is the duty? And the duty in this case is to obey the lawgiver.
This is only obviously from a theistic point of view, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
If you're a theist, you're not concerned if it brings about happiness to others. You're concerned about what your reward is, i.e. in the next life. Now, I reject this. I am not concerned with this. One, I reject the lawgiver.
Yes, I
Two,
think we all do if we're non-believers,
yeah, obviously. However, also, if we look on the progression of ethics and morality, we don't have to look very far when it was perfectly acceptable to be homophobic, perfectly acceptable to hate homosexuals to an extent. But I hope that most non-religious will say, I've got no problem with gay people. They just have a different taste to me. There is nothing intrinsically immoral about homosexuality as far as I'm concerned. Or if there is, it's certainly not unethical. And these are the distinctions. Another example is the notion of, well, not the notion, the practice of euthanasia. You could argue it's immoral. You are killing a human being, but you are clearly doing an ethical act. And
so what did the religious do in this case? Well, actually, before I ask you that question, can you explain situational ethics? Because that seems to me to be a position that is entirely rational and one that I seem to hold to, given what I understand about it.
yeah, absolutely. So, Schopenhauer answered this quite well. Well, much better than I would. I'm no Schopenhauer. But he gave a very crazy example, but it's a very valid example. He says, if a man comes into your house with a bag full of heads that he's cut off children, and he says, where is your child? You're going to lie. You're not going to say he's upstairs asleep. Now, that is a wild example. But if I'm walking down the street and someone looks at me and I'm walking along with, let's say, with Rob, and he looks at me and says, I want to harm atheists. Can you tell me where there's an atheist? I'm not going to point at Rob and go, thou shalt not lie. I'm going to say, I don't know. Well, he ran away. There's an atheist 2 streets away. Off you go. I mean, these are examples which may be very unlikely, but these are valid examples where you look at situation and we accept that lying is wrong, but there's sometimes where you just have to. But also,
it's morally wrong, but ethically right, in other words. So there's certain situations,
absolutely,
i.e. situational ethics, where it's it may be considered generally morally wrong, but ethically correct or ethically right to lie. The example you've given a couple there, and the one that's often used is, the Germans coming to somebody's door and saying, hey, have you got are you hiding any Jews? And you say, no, you're not, because you know that if you answered correctly, those Jews would most likely be punished or killed or sent off to the gas chambers or whatever.
Absolutely. Now we have a problem. These examples are, we could go, let's say one of the examples I like using is euthanasia. Now let's bring it onto religion. The religious, whether it's Jews, Christians, or Muslims, they have a problem here, because whilst they want to say things like, obviously I will lie here, they cannot be saying that it's the right thing to do. Because as far as they're concerned, thou shalt not lie. If they say it's the right thing to do, then they're saying that God got it wrong. And there are occasions where they can lie. So when they say you have no moral standing, well, you could have your morality. I'm going to make judgments accordingly. Because according to your moral law, there are times where what you think is the right thing to do is actually wrong.
I suppose they will respond. And by the way, Jameson Stops, feel free to jump in as well, because it's, I mean, Michael is leading the sort of presentation discussion, but you know, we can all jump in and share as well. I guess the pushback they would have on that particular point you brought up, Michael, is that they will go, well, you don't know what you think is wrong. You're a limited being. God has got a wiser. He knows everything. So in fact, even though he ordered the slaughter of women and children, babies and animals and so forth, that couldn't possibly have been any harm, he knows best because he knows things that you don't know.
Yeah, they can say that. They really can. But these are the cop-outs that religious use. These are things that to me are becoming irrelevant, because I assure you, if a man comes into my house saying, I'm here to kill your son, I'm not going to wait and say, God knows best. I'm going to lead him out my house by any lies possible. And if there is a God and he judges me for that, you know what? Like the great Christopher Hitchens would say, I'd rather go to hell, because heaven sounds like a celestial North Korea.
Mm.
You know, they they are. The issue I'm trying to put forward is that while I am willing to concede that they have some kind of basis for their morality. The problem I have with this is that it sometimes leads them to a brick wall. It leads them to a position where, by doing and following what is the moral law, they can be doing harm.
Okay, so but you said something interesting there. You said you accept that they may have a basis for morality. Maybe you can explain that. Given the following, I'll give you, because we chatted about this the other day, and I thought it would be good to bring it up here. They often say they have objective basis for morality because God is all knowing. He created us, and therefore whatever God says is objectively true or right.
Yes.
And I object to that. So maybe you can, just because God either knows everything or created us, to my ear anyway, and I'm happy to be corrected, it doesn't follow that what he says is morally good. If he says kill somebody, and I as his soldier or his devotee or whatever the case is, have an ethical problem with that. If he says go and kill that baby, for example, or put them to the sword, as was said in the Bible, or whatever, I would have a problem with that. So, you know, is he in fact, because the question that an atheist asked in Speaker's Corner, which he asked Hijab this, and those who may remember that video, and Stops in particular will remember it, Hijab went into all kinds of a flap. He asked the question, how does God know what God knows is good? How does God know what God knows is good? In other words, what is the standard by which God knows is good? Now, traditionally, the apologetic is, well, it's God's nature that is good. Well, all you're doing is kicking it back a step, and you're claiming that God's nature is good. You're just making an assertion, but there's no. So, on what basis would you say that is a basis, or that it's objective? Because to me, it sounds like it's arbitrary.
Well, Plato and Socrates had a conversation about this, and Socrates said, does God command good because it's good, or is good good and therefore God commands it? And Plato answered, no, good is good and therefore God commands it. And Socrates said, I don't need God then, because I know what's good. So that's one. But the problem I have with this idea that if God said it is good, to me, is because I could find numerous texts, particularly in the Old Testament, where you will go, you cannot possibly think this is good.
Yeah, slavery,
and I'm not,
or whatever.
I'm not just talking the slaughtering of children. I'm talking like in the Old Testament, where it says if a grandmother weaves a cloth with two different threads, she's to be killed. I mean, there is no way a Jew could look at that and spin it to mean anything else and then say, well, this is okay.
Yes, and in fact, you could ask the question, under what circumstance could that possibly ever be okay?
Yeah, and even at the time when this was commanded, if it was commanded, why would she? You could argue, don't, if they feel she shouldn't, for some reason, weaving a cloth with two threads is a terrible thing, but to actually kill her, this is just a bit much. I mean, beyond much. And the problem we have here is the idea of not questioning this. Do not answer this. Do not question this. Now, because I do want to question. I look at things and I say, no, I'm not concerned about your so-called basis for morality. My basis for ethics is what brings about the maximum happiness and the least pain. Not necessarily in the golden rule sense. I have issues with the golden rule, but that's could be a whole different conversation. But in general, the golden rule does work. And the minute you say I've got an unbinding categorical morality, we have a problem that says, well, if it goes wrong, it doesn't matter. God knows best. No, it does matter. It matters a great deal. We've led someone to harm. All you had to do was lie. You've kept somebody suffering against what may be his will with a terminal disease. Why not let him die in a dignified manner? No, God said no. And these things, to me, in the modern day particularly, just don't work anymore. Homosexuality 100 years, not even 100 years in the Middle East, are being killed for their nature. Now, if you're an atheist, there is no reason for you to be homophobic. No rational reason. The only reason you're homophobic is because of religion. And religion says kill homosexuals. And this is a moral thing. Surely your ethics would say, no, this can't be. But if you have this basis, this so-called base for morality, it leads to situations where you're doing wrong. And I'm sorry, you can say, but God knows best. Well, no, I'm not convinced he does.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a cop out. That's what really, when it gets to the base of it, some religious people will just, and that's a synonym for God is a mystery. This is mysterious. We don't understand it. We're just going to accept that God has got a bigger purpose here. It can't be that God's made a mistake, or we as humans have interpreted it incorrectly, if in fact the message was sent, because we're fallible. But there must be a bigger purpose there. In other words, it's unfalsifiable. And whatever God says is true. We can't, as you say, we can't challenge that. There must he knows the reason why, and so we've just got to go with it no matter what. And that's definitely sort of blind faith.
Yeah, but I think it's sometimes borderline. I don't like using the word evil, but certainly wicked, because the idea is, we can do harm and it doesn't matter. But also, there's another issue with Sam Harris, which, by the way, I stayed up all night reading his book last night.
Oh, excellent.
Sam Harris does point out that we should look at ethics in a like science. It moves on, it moves forward. We're discovering new ways of looking at the world every day. And if you look at how science has developed and changed the world, so has ethics. Now he doesn't talk about the distinction between morality and ethics. That's fine, but he uses morality in the same way as ethics. He uses the word in exactly the same context, but he is getting at the same thing. He is saying that morality can change. That's fine. That's fine. But the point here is he uses morality like a scientist. He says morality changes, and sometimes we do get things slightly wrong, but then we fix that. We fix it and we move on and we move on in order to find a solution that may be benefit to all of us. The religious cannot do this. It's been revealed. That's what we do.
Is it possible for a moral system to be objective but not categorical? Because I feel like when Muslims say we have objective morality, they don't necessarily mean in a categorical sense, in the way that you kind of described, sort of categorical.
I don't see how it could be.
How do you think it could be, James?
Well, I feel like I've come across sort of reasoning in a sort of jurisprudence about kind of like, for example, like what one of the examples kind of Muslims often use, which is we'd agree is kind of an example of them using ethics, is the fact that kind of the prescribed kind of punishment in the Qur'an is cut the hand of the one who steals. But the second kind of caliph, Umar, kind of when there was like a famine and people were poor, he kind of suspended that punishment, because he sort of thought, well, you know, people are going to be like, people are being forced to steal because of the you know, the drought or the famine, and so kind of it doesn't make it isn't ethical, you could say, for us to do this punishment anymore. And I feel like that's something that's kind of sort of that's kind of they kind of get a lot of mileage out of that principle in Sharia law. And so I feel I think like, you know, a sort of orthodox Muslim kind of wouldn't say, oh no, we always kind of apply every single kind of principle necessarily. But I know that wasn't a well-formed thought, but never mind.
But James, the categorical law that we're talking about here would be not stealing. They may change the punishment for stealing, but the moral laws don't steal. So technically speaking, that categorical objective law still stays the same. They may change the punishment, but the moral laws do not steal. So technically speaking, it is still categorical. It's not like he's saying we're poor, therefore you can steal.
Okay, that's a good a better example I should have used then was I think kind of also in like Islamic law, there's kind of like an idea of duress. And so, for example, if there's nothing for you to eat apart from pork, then, you know, you're allowed to eat pork. For example, like, it's better that you can't eat pork than you starve. I mean, I think they say kind of, or is no, sorry, it's not. Like, if you did say, I'm not going to eat pork, I'm not going to break kind of halal, then you'd be considered, oh, well done, you're a martyr, you're going to heaven. But if you did kind of eat pork, then, like, you know, it wouldn't be like a sin in the same way that it's normally sinful. So I think they aren't sort of, even though they say we have objective morals because they come from God, I don't feel like they're normally saying kind of we have categorical morals.
I've heard this. I forget his name. Ginger Muslim.
Sorry, Hamza. Yeah,
Hamza once said exactly that to me, and my answer was, okay, so you give me an example where certain teaching in the Quran, in order to preserve life, you could choose not to act on it, i.e., or in this case, you could avoid it. You can eat pork. I said, but that's a very clear instruction, because he was arguing that the laws of Islam are hypothetical according to the situation. I said, but if that is the case, can I, and I always go back to the lying or stealing, can I actually lie just in order to, because let's say if I'm an atheist or if I'm a Muslim, but I don't want to say this, but not in the case of jizya, just because I want to lie, because I want to, you know, whatever. Or I think I used something else, not the jizya, sorry, the other term they use for lying.
Takia.
Takia. And he then started saying, well, I said, because you got to understand what I'm trying to get at here. I said to him is, if you're saying they're hypothetical, I don't need the rule book, because the rule book doesn't tell me. What it tells me is, do not do this. God is saying in the Quran, do not do this. And in other times it's saying, do that. And if you do this, it's a punishment. If you don't do that, there's a punishment, and vice versa. And what you're saying is that is not the case. Now, what he answered is, anything that endangers life or preserves life, you can either do or avoid.
Yeah, but again, you can bring up examples where that wouldn't be the case.
That's it.
Well, it depends what you mean by, preserve life. Do you mean one person's life or the majority of people's lives?
He said in general. But then I just said to him, okay, I have no problem with this. He went, oh, alhamdulillah. I said, but then you don't have objective morality. He said, well, we do. I said, no, because you're looking at this situation and they change. And he said, no, they're still objective. I said, you clearly don't know what we mean by objective.
I think that's the key point, isn't it? Is what do you mean by objective? And that's what you were saying as well, James.
Yeah.
Different from categorical, but what is objective? What does it mean to be objective?
I personally search about it. I think that when it comes down to morality, I think categorical and objective, I use it as the same thing. When I say they're objective, I mean they're unquestionable. When I mean they're categorical, I mean that they are unbinding. You don't have an opinion on this. So when they say objective, I don't believe they mean the law is objective. What they're really saying is it's objective because of where it comes from. So, and because they, as far as I'm concerned, the theist doesn't have a
We're losing you. Say it again, Michael.
They either believe.
Michael, we lost you there. Just say that again.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, they either believe it or the punishment is horrendous. It's not. It's a bit like standing on a square and someone saying you have free will to leave the square, but if you do, we will shoot you. That's not really free will, is it? I mean, so when the laws of morality in religion, i.e. Islam or any of the religious, the Abrahamic religious, they are by nature, because I believe they can't even question them. This is what God said. This is what Allah said in the Quran.
Michael, can I ask you a question?
Oh, please do.
How well do you know the Quran?
I think I know it well enough.
Okay.
But I may
know
be
the
wrong.
story of Khidr, the green guy?
Yes.
Okay. In my eyes, this is one of the most immoral stories that you can get. How would you suggest a theist manages to somehow justify to himself that it is okay to destroy the boats just because somebody else is going to use them against yourself in a war, or that it's okay to kill a kid just because later on he will carry on to question his own parents? How do I mean, these are, in my eyes, they are highly immoral. How do you think a theist manages to justify this to himself and say there is some morality there? Is it that the ends justify the means? Is that all it is?
These are questions that I ask all the time. I once said this to a Jewish friend of my mother's. I'm not going to name drop, but he was a very eminent Jew, let's say. And I said, as a Jew, how do you justify these things? And he was also a philosopher. And I said, if you put your philosophical hat, how do you justify these teachings in the light of your philosophical training? And he simply said, God said so, I don't question this. I said, take off your religious hat for a second. I say, if you read this objectively, without emotion, without fear of burning in hell, you cannot possibly say this is okay. And when they say they are moral acts, what they are doing is just turning off all critical faculty. That's how I see it. That's how I see tons of, I mean, so many of these teachings where you could just say, if you look at this objectively, or like I once said to a Muslim in Hyde Park, if this was in any other book, you would say this is wrong. The minute it's in the Quran, you automatically say it's okay. This
so
is
blind
not rational.
obedience. That's all it is.
As far as I'm concerned, that is even the nature of morality. Blind obedience. Do not question.
Thank you. I was curious if there was something that I was missing, if there's anything more there, but it doesn't look like it, does it?
Stops. I truly don't believe there's anything you're missing when it comes down to Islam, but there you go.
the biggest thing that I hear a lot is that, hey, we've got this moral, objective moral, and like it's something you said, Michael. We don't critique that enough, because if their claim is that it's moral because God said so, which is the Euthyphro dilemma, which you mentioned a little bit earlier, which is something moral because it is just moral, or is it moral because God says so? If it's moral because God says so, then it's arbitrary and not objective. And if it's moral outside of God because God knows it's moral because he's looking outside of himself, then we don't require God, because we can also do that same sort of thing. So, and of course, as we've said, quote unquote advanced theists like William Lane Craig and others will try and answer this by saying, no, it's God's nature that is moral. But this is just an assertion, because we could also say, as we look at the world, we could say God's nature is evil, because we see the unnecessary suffering in the world. And so whatever God says is good, is that in fact good by the standard that we use, which is the well-being or the suffering of conscious creatures? And if they're going to use some other standard outside of the well-being or suffering of conscious creatures, then are we talking about morality? So what I thought about is when theists bring this up and ask, well, what do you, as an atheist, do you have objective morals? Now, Harris's view is that there are objective morals, and he tries to quantify that with science. Many atheists say, no, we've got relative morals, which does seem to is a weaker position, although I have heard it being argued reasonably well. But maybe the thing to do is to go, well, what do you, Mr. Theist, mean when you say objective? And so get them to first quantify theirs, because if we can't agree on what the word objective means, then I'm not going to accept that they have objective, and they're not going to accept that I have an objective. But I think it needs to be put back onto them, because they're claiming it and we're not challenging it. We're just accepting that because they're God, in their world, if God says so, it is objective. And to my ear anyway, we shouldn't just be accepting that.
Sam Harris yesterday in his book, I said yesterday, I read it yesterday, he gives a really elegant example. You're playing chess. To keep your queen is always as long as possible.
Sorry, say it again.
But
We
sometimes
dropped you there, Michael. We lost you a little bit. So can you just repeat what you said about Sam Harris from the beginning there?
Sorry. Yeah. So he says but there are sometimes where losing your queen is it maybe the right move. Now he then says, well, this is morality to him. You always try to be moral, but sometimes there are things you may make a decision which is against that moral code. Now, he does not make the philosophical distinction between morality and ethics, but I think if he were to hear that, he would agree with this. Because I think he doesn't use that distinction because maybe he hasn't heard it. It's not being publicized as much. I mean, the person who wrote this initially was actually a woman in 1960 called Philippa Foot, and it's there in moral ethical philosophy. When you read it, it's there. But unless you're someone that really wants to read this stuff, you're not going to find the distinction straight away. But I think he's making this distinction without using the words ethics and morality, because he says things like, I will go against the moral law and it's the right thing to do. Like another example he gives, surely. Sorry, let me stop there. He talks about the idea of having sacrifice in a game of chess. I say this again because he says it is the right thing to do, and he likens this to going against the moral law, the right thing to do. Well, those decisions, as far as I'm concerned, are not moral decisions, they're ethical decisions. You're saying what was the best possible outcome. Again, morality is not concerned with possible outcome. Morality is concerned with obedience. What is obedience? What would the lawgiver tell me to do? Ethics is not concerned with that.
So I want to welcome in Mustafa. We met at Speaker's Corner, and I'm just trying to rack my brains around, because we have met, and as soon as I hear you, welcome to the show. You wanted to bring in a slightly different view on morals and ethics. remind me, I'm not sure if you're Muslim or if you're ex-Muslim. Now, I'm trying to rack my brain because we did meet at Speaker's Corner, but I just can't remember exactly because I meet so many people. So welcome to the show. Maybe you can just remind me your views, from which position you're coming in, and give us your view on this.
Sure thing. Hey, guys. First off, can you guys hear me clearly?
Yes. I think I know who you are now, if I remember correctly. I think we chatted briefly in the park, and I'm sure Michael will know who you are.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, to Michael. I absolutely love what he has to say most of the time. Anyway.
Thank you. Most of the time is a good thing.
Go ahead, Mustafa. What is your view on? You've obviously heard Michael. You've heard us chatting about this. What's your view?
Sure. So first of all, thanks for having me on, guys. And Michael, thanks again for coming. I'm not here to argue with Michael or the guys, really. It's just so Michael's coming from a learned philosophic point of view on morality. My background is mostly relating to engineering, and is coming up again and again in the engineering community is largely due to the increasing importance of machine learning and algorithms will be put in situations where it has to make moral decisions. Last week or the week before in Speaker's Corner about the trolley problem. So if you have a train and the train has to choose between killing people, which choice will it make? Now, when you put a self-driving car in that position, you're starting to have to encode moral and an algorithm. And that's typically where I would come in. How do you encode moral behavior? How do you express it in a way to understand? Sorry, is my voice breaking?
It is to me. I don't know if it's just my connection. James,
Yep.
Michael,
A
is
little
he
bit.
breaking up or is he coming through clearly?
It's breaking up, but enough to be able to hear. I'm not losing an entire sentence or anything. I can follow what he's saying.
Mustafa, are you on a mobile phone or on a computer?
Sure. So one of the prevalent sort of viewpoints from a philosophical perspective, but it stems more from a social psychology perspective. And one of the guys looking into that extensively, a psychologist named Jonathan Haidt, and the theory he proposed is something called moral foundations theory. And what he did, different parameters upon which hello?
Oh yeah, we're losing you. We're losing you every so often here.
Upon engage in moral thinking and reasoning. Did I drop off or something, guys? Sorry.
Yes, you're dropping off every few words. So we're getting some of the words, but then you're dropping off. So we're not hearing you clearly.
Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I don't know.
Are you on a mobile phone or a computer?
Nope. Broadband, normal computer, nice connection. I can hear you guys perfectly.
Yeah, I just wondered if it was me. I've had some broadband issues, but the other guys are saying that you're also breaking up a little bit. I'm not sure if it's worth.
Where did I drop off?
I'm not sure if it's worth maybe just restarting your computer and just opening up the browser and reconnecting to us to see if that makes a difference. I mean, I don't know if you've got any other programs running in the background, because what will affect this your voice is anything that is outgoing. So if your computer is doing anything in the background or anybody else is on your internet connection sending data to the internet, that will affect your voice quality.
100 things open here. Let me just sort of shut them down.
Yeah, close everything. At the moment, you may have something else running in the background there that is preventing. Either it's using up all your CPU, or there's something else sending data to the internet, and it's interfering with your voice, the quality of your voice. We just dropped.
Let me. Yeah, I've got a couple of browsers open. Sure, is that a little better?
Okay, go ahead. Try it again. Let's listen. So you were talking about.
I've closed off. Yeah, I'm talking about Jonathan Haidt. Are you guys familiar with his work? First of all, I don't want to be wasting anybody's time.
I know of him, but I haven't read much on him. But I know of him. I know he and Harris have had conversations, and he's had a conversation with other people. And Harris has challenged him in his book as well. So I am aware of him, but I haven't read any of his books.
I know that he was annoyed about trigger warnings in universities.
So let me just, he said, and why his, sorry, James, go ahead.
No, go ahead. So before you go ahead, though, Mustafa, are you claiming, are you putting it forward as a view that you think is a moral, ethical system that is worth considering, that is different to what we're talking about?
Well, it's different, but it could potentially underlie a whole series of ethical systems and introduce a different perspective. Ethical systems work the way they do.
Yeah, you're dropping off. Mustafa, can I ask you to disconnect and maybe restart your computer? Just open up a single browser and reconnect to us here, because we are still battling to hear you clearly. So it's not coming through in a way that we can follow you clearly, unfortunately.
Sure. Sorry, guys. Let me log off and log on again. No problem.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Can I just
go ahead, Michael? Because you have, I'm not sure that you're finished yet anyway, so I want you.
No. I'm welcoming all of this. Is brilliant. Can I just interject? So when the religious talk about the moral law, as they do, particularly the Abrahamic religious, and let's say the Muslims, they always seem, they seem to believe, we've got the book, comes from God, higher standard. It's in the Quran, that's why we do it, that's why you should do it. If you're not doing it, you're immoral. But let's go back, to the years of the Greeks. They didn't really believe that the gods interfered. Aristotle believed that God was like a cocktail maker. He believed that God made a cocktail, or let me rephrase that the cocktail maker makes a cocktail, he passes you a drink, he can no longer intervene in that cocktail. That's a bit like God to Aristotle. Aristotle doesn't believe that the gods or God intervenes in human affairs. He thought this was all just a bit strange. He could go and create another planet, but that's as far as it goes. Now, we know that through history that life in Athens and Greece was different to today, but they did have very high moral standard. If you look at the books of Aristotle, the Nicomachean Ethics, the Ethics, he talks about what is called the means. One of the means is do not lie, do not kill, do not steal. He doesn't say he's getting this from God. He's getting this through observation. He's getting this through what would bring about the maximum, calls it eudaimonia. Socrates spoke about this, but not as much as Aristotle. Now, the theist, particularly the Muslims, always want to say, prior to Islam, prior to religion, the world was in chaos. I just don't believe it was. Not in the chaos they want us to believe. The Chinese in China, there wasn't, as far as I know, murdering down the street. People didn't just walk down the street and stab someone for fun and walk off. And they had high moral standard, high ethical standard. The point I want to lead to is I truly believe that if religion didn't exist, the ethics that we uphold today, I think would be more or less the same. I really do. I think this idea that morality, religion, if the world was not as religious as it is, that somehow now there'd be ethical and moral chaos, I think it's just nonsense. I really do.
Yeah, you'd have to make an argument for it, because the theist will just push back at you and go, hey, they may have had some morals, but when we came along and God gave us the objective morals in the book, he's corrected, he's improved upon whatever came before, because men were fallible, they could be wrong. God is infallible, he sent the perfect word down, and so whatever they had, we've either improved upon it or we've corrected whatever was mistaken. So they can easily push back. So in order for you to make that argument, I guess you need some kind of, you need more reasons.
I've got that.
Okay, right.
From Christopher Hitchens, tell us one moral law that religion has brought us that we did not know already. From we could look at the book of Marcus Aurelius, we could look at the works of Aristotle, we could look at the works of Seneca, we could look at all these people who did not claim to have revelation, where we could take from this already what is more or less the 10 Commandments, maybe not the 10 Commandments, but the good bits of the 10 Commandments which they uphold. The idea of not stealing, not killing, respecting your parents. Aristotle speaks about this, and he doesn't speak that, he doesn't say it's a revelation. Marcus Aurelius talks about this. He doesn't claim to be having a revelation. Seneca talks about this. Nothing to do with revelation. So I could easily have been a Greek who found Aristotle's book somewhere in a cave. I don't need a religion. I've got these teachings.
I think what you brought up there is very valid, and Hitchens put it like that, although slightly differently from what I remember. In order for religion to claim that it has any sort of moral high ground, they need to answer the following challenge, which is, name for us a religious act or a religious ethic that you could only do as a religious person of whichever sect, be it Islam, Christianity, etc., that a non-religious person could not do, that we would agree is moral. He didn't actually say this, but this was what he was inferring from what I read from it. So somebody would have to say, okay, so for the only example that he gave that he thought didn't meet the challenge but was along the lines of what he was asking for is when the Christians say, God forgive them for they know not what they do. But he also pointed out that we don't, we as non-believers don't think that that's a moral position to hold. But if you were to take the Christian view, that would be a moral, but we don't agree with that. So it would have to be something that all of us would agree is moral, but that only a Muslim or a Christian could claim to have as a foundation, and the rest of us would be borrowing from them. And I've never heard anybody actually give one where we would all agree. So I think that's a good point to make.
Yeah, but the thing is, Ali Dawah about 3 years ago, he said, you show me a moral teaching that was not brought around by the theistic religions, he said to me. I said, I'm willing to come here next week with one of Aristotle's books where he's teaching don't lie, don't kill, and he's giving reasons for this. And he said, are you willing to bring me an original? I said, Ali, there is no original Aristotle, so then I can't accept it. I thought, well, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think Ali Dawah is really,
No, we know.
Going for low-hanging fruit there, to be honest.
Yeah, I understand that. But the point is, when he tried turning the challenge around, his answer was, bring me on no original Aristotle. Well, I wish I could. I really do. I mean, I really wish anyone could do that. But the point is, because the majority of these people have not actually read that well the philosophers, what they don't realize, they seem to think they have a monopoly on these teachings. Well, these teachings were already taught. They were taught by people prior to this, without claiming revelation. Now, what they will say is, but because it is from God, it has some kind of more importance. Not to me, it doesn't. I've already got those teachings.
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't bother me.
Okay, good. Great. So Mustafa, let's see if you're back now with us. Let's see, before you just unmute yourself, before you you carry on, let's see if you hopefully got a good connection. I just want to put forward, there was a comment here in the comment section from Yellow Pete, who said, you could also ask, so are God's properties good because of an external goodness, or are the good properties good in virtue of being held by God, and the dilemma persists? So that's obviously referring to, the theistic position. So are the properties of God good because of an external goodness outside of God that he is measuring his goodness by, or are the properties good by virtue of being held by God? Are they automatically good because God holds them, and you still have the same issue? Either they're arbitrary, or God is appealing to something outside of himself, in which case we can dispense with the middleman. So either way, it's a problem. Mustafa, over to you. Perhaps you can try again. Let's hear how you sound now.
Sure, no problem. Really now?
Yeah, you're still breaking up a little bit, unfortunately. Try a little bit. Otherwise, we may have to ask you to try again another day if the internet's not so good.
This, guys. Sure, no problem. So yeah. So as far as moral foundations theory goes, I'd like to start just with a very quick quote from Catherine Adventures in the Margins of Error. And it brings to the subject that you guys were bringing up earlier today. If I believe unshakably in the rightness of my own convictions, it follows that those who hold opposing views are doing the truth. As such, violence does not stem from a psychopathic lack of morality. Quite the reverse of perceived moral rights and obligations. So in general, people who kill people don't see themselves in the eyes of their peers. They are good people fighting for what's right. So did you guys hear that?
No, Mustafa.
No, how was it?
You've broken up a lot there as well. I'm sorry, I don't think it's going to work, because any conversation we're going to have with you now is going to be a real battle to understand what you're saying.
No, that's fine, Rob. But thanks for having me aboard anyway. I do apologize.
Feel free to come on again.
If I interrupted.
And let's just see. I mean, I don't know if it's a connection. You might be having an issue tonight, or whether there's something with your computer. Or the other option you could try is on a mobile phone, because that link I sent you would also work. So if you have a mobile phone and you've got the Hangouts app, whether it's iOS or Android, you could try connecting on your mobile phone and see if that works. That might solve it. I'm not sure.
Rob, I'm not gonna keep bothering you guys with this. I don't want to keep interrupting the show. So I'll catch you guys later. No.
All right. Sorry about that. Yeah, you're breaking up such a lot there that it would be difficult to hear you. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for trying. So over to James and to Michael. Stops. Thoughts on anything else that we've talked about? Is there any other questions that we want to add to that?
Can I ask for if there is any Christians out there listening? A lot of Christians seem to, and I like the Jesus character. I think he's interesting. I think the Jesus character is nice. He has some good moral teachings or ethical teachings. But Aristotle would turn in his grave the minute Jesus said to Peter, "Leave your wife and children and follow me." I think this is one of the least teachings any human being could do. To actually say to someone, "Leave your wife and children and come and follow me," is just terrible.
Well, did he mean leave them permanently, or did he mean leave them for a short while so you can become a better person and go back to them? Or?
Well, he left them permanently.
Right.
Jesus was a total asshole.
Thank you. I just didn't want to say it in those words.
Yes, I mean we don't. I agree that if that was the moral command, then that's highly questionable. I mean we normally focus on Islam, but I think all of us that are non-religious don't think that Christianity has any better moral standing or is any likelier to be true than Islam.
No, absolutely. Yeah. But I think there's this common idea that some people think, oh, you could be a philosopher and an atheist, but still Jesus' teachings were quite nice. Not really.
Which one?
Yeah, exactly. Not really. Exactly. And you could give other examples, but that one it always gets to me. This idea of leave your wife and children and follow me. What he should have said is go back home. You've got a wife and kid. I'll find someone else. The Christians are not challenged enough on these little details of Christianity. We like to joke at the Muslims. I love pointing out to the Muslims the nonsenses the Muslims believe. Muhammad bringing down the moon and cutting it in half and so on and so forth. But these little details of Christianity, I think, need to be challenged more, because they really also say the stuff of, if you're an atheist, you don't have morals. Well, your morals are twisted.
In contemporary,
Yeah, I mean, that's true. And we could do that as Speaker's Corner. I mean, this show focuses on critiquing Islam, so we won't do much of that on here. But you're right, you know, and the same principles hold there. Yeah, sorry, carry on, James.
Well, in contemporary kind of Christianity, just the same way that they don't, like most churches kind of don't really dwell too much on the Old Testament, apart from like the Ten Commandments. Kind of, I feel like kind of, yeah, contemporary Christianity also kind of conveniently kind of forgets. I know, for example, Jesus kind of, for example, doing that and saying, "Oh, leave your family to follow me," or they also forget, for example, the him saying something about like a woman should never speak in church or that sort of thing. So it's probably like, you know, good for us that they kind of forget those things. They've kind of like excised and like come up with kind of quite a toothless, attenuated, kind of benevolent form of their religion, which I think would be kind of quite a nice sort of end goal for Islam. Like just kind of keep on weakening it and making it more toothless and like less intact from how it was before, and then you're just left with like all the kind of fluffy nice stuff, and that would be like, you know, no, it wouldn't be any more of a kind of bother to us than Christianity was, if it was like no longer kind of Salafi Islam but kind of fluffy Islam.
Yeah, I agree that it would be less harmful. It wouldn't make it any more true. So there's obviously the two parts. A, is it true? B, you know, what effect does it have on society? And I agree with you, James. I mean, Christianity, generally speaking, has less of an effect potentially than it did in the past. Certainly in certain aspects, maybe not so much in others. And if Islam could follow that, then that would be one thing. It still doesn't get either of those religions out of the, you know, the much more challenging part, which is the ideology, the views true? So yeah, I agree that if you could make it more toothless, that would certainly be more palatable in the Western world. And that's what people are trying to do, be it Majid Nawaz or others, maybe like a Saracen type person or whoever who's trying to reinterpret, because their moral intuitions are being pushed and prodded. And they go, no, this can't be true. Who do I find? How do I follow somebody that can make it palatable to me now? Because I have a Western style of morality, and you know, Muhammad sleeping with a 6-year-old, or sorry, a 9-year-old, or having slaves, you know, that just can't be. If I want to believe in this guy, for example, he needs to be a better guy than that. And so, who do I follow, and how do I rationalize this so that he doesn't appear to be this? And then I can at least follow him.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, James, you sound like a Dalek. It's really difficult to listen and concentrate. Mr. Prokletchi is making I think a good point here. Is it moral for a Muslim to follow the law of the land, which is against Sharia?
Sorry, say that again, Stops.
Is it moral for a Muslim to follow the law of the land that contradicts Sharia?
Well, I hear Muslims saying yes, they are commanded to follow the laws of the land that they are in. But again,
contradicts Sharia. Is it moral to do something that is against your God? Because the God commands, no, you're not allowed to do this and this and that, and then the law of the land says, no, it's very different. And now you follow the law of the land, which would go against and contradict Sharia. Is it moral or is it not?
But then that goes back to the point I was making to Hamza. Then you don't have objective morality. If it's objective morality, it's the same everywhere.
And this is exactly the question. How do you decide now? If you follow the law of the land, are you a bad Muslim?
James, what do you think on this? I'm not too sure.
Yeah,
I think yes.
I think the sort of the most sort of mainstream answer, if you ask like a mufti or something, would be, yeah, it's good to follow the law of the land, unless the law of the land is making you do something really extreme. Then I think they say if the law of the land is preventing you from being a Muslim, then you should just leave that land, or something like that. So they take quite a sort of a reasonable approach. Like, you aren't expected to be a kind of a martyr and like be taken into jail. Like if it says kind of if the law suddenly says kind of, it's illegal to pray, then
exactly. And this is the question. This is very nicely put. Which objective morality should we subjectively choose?
Yes,
Yes.
exactly. I mean, if tomorrow we outlawed halal slaughter, which I would be entirely for, by the way, or any sort of ritualistic slaughter of animals, which causes unnecessary suffering, are they going to accept that? Are they going to eat non-halal meat in this country?
Exactly. How do you do this? Exactly. This is the question.
Because
How do you get around it?
Ethically, it's the right thing to do, is not to cause unnecessary suffering. And the same with Eid. I mean, if you look at, the slaughtering of, I saw a few photos and I posted one of them with animals slaughtered all over the show, blood flowing everywhere because of this mythical belief with Abraham and his son.
Yeah. Well,
I've got the Muslim Fruitful Stops on. I wanted to ask your opinion. He wants to come on because he's tried to broach this topic with us before, and obviously we've got James and Michael on here as well. Your thoughts
on what? On Fruitful?
Yeah.
Well, is he going to contribute anything? No. I mean, we know already what he's going to say. Does it make sense? Because he's going to run off somewhere else and he's going to tell us all that we are going to suffer in hell if we don't do what his God does, because after all, his God created us, and because his God knows exactly what we need and what we don't need because he created us. Who better to know the humans, the creation that he created, than the creator himself?
that's more or less what he would say.
Okay, but we could always ask, well, how do you know that's true, though?
Are you going to get an answer? He's going to say because the swing on the roundabout is 15.
Now, can I bring a point direct into Islam?
Sure.
Now, in Islam, they don't really have the 10 Commandments as such in the list that they have in the Old Testament. Now, and they have the idea of abrogation. Now, this is a question, but also a statement. Does God in the Quran, when he abrogates, therefore that abrogation, he's also abrogating moral law? So by nature, at that point, what at one point was clearly objective because the lawgiver, a God, said so, then he has changed his mind and we have a new law. So in the context of the idea of objective moral law, which the theists always claim to, well, I have a problem with this, because if he's abrogating all over the shop to an extent, well, what it's objective in parts, in other parts it's not objective. It becomes a very much. We all know that the Quran is a mishmash of all types of things, but when they make this claim of objective morality, in my opinion, all they're saying is we have an objective source of morality, because their morality isn't that objective. They're all over the shop. Can you correct me on this?
Well, let's bring him in for a short while. If it's not going to go anywhere, then he's got a very valuable. Don't listen to morality metaphysics is what he wants to talk about. Don't listen to stops. I have a very valuable translation.
I like stops.
All right, well, I'll give him the link and we'll see if it goes anywhere. If it doesn't, then I think we'll.
But do you see the point I'm making? Stops here.
Yeah, but of course, but if you look at what the Quran says, how can you take anything in there seriously?
No, I don't.
Well, this is the point, because how are you going to be able to rationalize any morality of your own person with what it says in the Quran? I mean, how can you have sex with a sex slave even if she's married elsewhere? You can't rationalize that.
There's a philosopher. She's a lady in UCL. She's called Susan James, Professor James. She's a professor in moral philosophy and the history of philosophy. And she read the Quran, and she's an atheist. I know her well. She said she read the Quran. She said, if there is a God, this was my penance, reading.
Oops, now you're gone.
We lost you there, Michael.
What a pity, just when it was getting interesting.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, what a pity. What's come up? Because I've never heard of Susan James.
I don't know what's happened. Michael, are you there? Michael?
Worse than a Dalek.
Oh, we've lost you. Fruitful, can you hear us? Speak, please, to make sure your connection is working. Hello, Fruitful. Can you hear us and can you respond?
Hello.
So I can check
Hello.
if your
Hello.
is your fruit.
Yes, I can hear you.
Is your fruit working? Is your connection working?
Yes, it's working.
Okay, so
I listened to the
yes, you've heard what we've talked
discussion.
about.
Yes, I just want to make this little contribution. You know, people usually speak يعني about morality in wrong terms from يعني they might use it as an argument for God, like a sort of a metaphysical argument. This is not a correct way to look at the issue, I believe. You have to define what morality means. When you were speaking about morality coming from God, are things moral because God commands these things, or are they moral, or does God command them because they are moral?
Yes, that's the Euthyphro dilemma. So what's your position on this?
Yes. And Christians, they say, I heard William Lane Craig is saying that God is, because God is good, things are moral. It has to do with his nature.
I believe this is, what is your position? What is your position?
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you. What is your position?
I believe this is all nonsense. Why? Because things, I believe in particulars. So when you say morality, you have to speak about some type of attributes in an action. So when you say, for example, what is morality? Morality is nothing more than this action being good, or this a moral action is an action that is good, and an immoral action is an action that is evil. In the sense that it leads to benefit and it repels harm, or it could be immoral if it leads to harm and it repels what is better. All comes down to pleasure and pain.
What do you mean by harm and benefit? To who?
To the agent.
Okay. Do you mean humans?
Human beings, yes.
Okay. Is it only for human beings, or is it for other sentient beings on the planet as well?
When you say morals, when you say you do a good action, it benefits you and it benefits other people.
Okay, so as an example, let me ask you an example then. Do you consider the unnecessary suffering of animals to be moral or immoral?
Unnecessary suffering, it is, I believe, it is immoral.
Okay.
And we have to slaughter animals in a good way.
Okay, so and if I could show you that that slaughtering animals through halal is
Rob, I don't want to discuss. I just want to show you this. I found a very valuable book, and I want you to read it. It has it was written. It was written by a Christian researcher. I don't know what exactly is his position, but he's researching a lot about Ibn Taymiyyah. And he writes the following about his position. It's a very clear position. Where was it? It says here. Where was it? Yes, 30. Yes. Okay. Would you mind if I read a little bit?
Go ahead.
Okay. He says that basically that he contrasts Ibn Taymiyyah contrasts the proofs for God's existence, the straightforward proofs for God's existence from reason with the kalam methods of rational inference, which is called nadar. Okay, and he proves those methods of kalam theologians are very twisted and very indirect, as I was trying to
morals, I just want to
say.
check in. Fruitful, is what you're reading or talking about, is this regarding to morals? Because it sounds like you're talking about other proofs for God's existence now.
No, it's about morals.
Okay,
he
so
says that
the short paragraph from the book.
Yes, where it comes in is that the fitra, it knows what is good and what is evil, and the reason knows what is good and what is evil. Okay, when this person, what's his name, the guest you had today, who was a Muslim, he was speaking a lot about morality and.
No, the only potentially Sufi Muslim is Mustafa that was on earlier. Everybody else here is a non-believer.
There was a person before him speaking.
No, Michael is not a Muslim. Michael is an atheist.
No, he's not a Muslim, but he used to be. I think.
No, none of the panelists here. No, Michael, as far as I know, Michael is not a Muslim. He's back on the show, or he might have stepped away. What's the position though, Fruitful? Maybe you can get to the point here.
It's not a good night.
Yeah, we're having trouble with connections. Fruitful, are you there? I've lost you.
Google Hangouts is chewing up the internet.
Hello?
Can you hear me, people?
Yes, there we go. Try again. Speak now. Are you speaking, Fruitful? I can't hear you. No, he's dropped off. Maybe he'll reconnect.
But I couldn't understand what.
Yes, I'm not following either. I'm not sure what the point is he's getting to here.
Anything.
I don't know. James, did you sort of make a head or tail of anything that he attempted to say there?
No, I don't think he's reached the point yet.
No, I didn't think so either. I was just seeing if we could jump the gun and see if we could understand where we think he's going. But I must confess, I'm not sure where he's attempting to go at the moment. But I think the simple seems to me anyway, at least for everybody who's viewing here. And yes, there's you can go into deep philosophical conversation, but it seems to me. Somebody like, okay, he's back in. Let me just see if that works. Hang on, let me just bring him in here.
But I believe that Vidu is on live, so I would suggest we keep it short today and not overrun by a couple of hours.
Okay, what's Vidu talking about?
I don't know. I just heard that he's live.
Okay. Hopefully he'll join you next week, Stops.
Yeah, but I don't want, there's a lot of people who are interested in this. So I don't want to keep them here when we're talking bullshit. Instead of taking it easy and then letting people to run off, because I think we've had a very good show on morality. Okay, we've shown that there is no such thing as objective, absolute, or categorical, or whatever word you want to use in front of morality, and that morality is morality. There are some things which are moral regardless of what, but now to open up a whole entire new category about that, I think is also the same as the ultimate and total and objective truth, same thing. I don't think it's warranted. So what we can say is that, yes, there is morality and we have dilemmas, like we know that everybody knows the trolley experiment. And we know, for example, that we're going to have self-driven cars, and this is going to be a huge problem. But I don't think that there is anything in Islam that we can learn, or in Christianity for that matter.
Okay.
Rob, can I just read the passage?
Go ahead, read the passage and then let's see if we can get to a point.
Yes. Okay. what does he say? He says, John Hoover writes the following. Beyond knowledge of God's existence, Ibn Taymiyyah believes that basic religious and ethical truths are also known by reason. Reason knows that the Creator must be the sole object of worship and that nothing may be associated with him. Reason also knows which human actions are good, Hasan, and which are bad, reduced to the difference between suitability, pleasure, profit, and benefit for the agent on one hand, and unsuitability, incompatibility, pain, harm, and detriment on the other. In this regard, the Shaykh notes the view of Fakhruddin al-Razi that reason knows whether... okay, I'll just go through this quickly. Ibn Taymiyyah rightly remarks that all... okay, this is a passage translated from Ibn Taymiyyah himself. This is what he writes. He writes, the perfection that occurs to the human being through some acts goes back to agreement and opposition, which is pleasure and pain. The soul takes pleasure in what is perfection for it, and it suffers pain in the imperfection. So perfection and imperfection go back to the suitable and the incompatible. He's speaking about perfection and imperfection as what is good. It's another way of saying what is good and what is bad. Then John writes...
Okay, what's the point though? Okay, I understand that. What is...
The point is that what is the role of revelation in... I found a very beautiful point here. He says that revelation, a good action, we know before the coming of revelation, we know with fitrah and with reason that, for example, stealing is bad and lying is bad, and that injustice is bad. These things, you know them through reason and through the fitrah. People intuitively know.
Yeah, but the fitrah is something A, we don't believe in. B, it seems to be an additional assumption that you're making that we don't need. So even if we granted that we could understand some, not all, but some of the moral dilemmas through reason, the fitrah doesn't seem to add anything to it. So it's superfluous. Like we can use Occam's razor and dispense with the fitrah. What benefit is there of the fitrah if we're using reason?
Well, I think fitrah is just a reinforcement. It's anyway. I wanted to say that. Yes, this is very beautiful thing he said. He said that people, there were some strands in Islamic thought. You see, Rob.
Yeah, what are you trying to say? Sorry. Yes, I can hear you.
There are some strands in Islamic thought which spoke of morality as things being moral because a thing is moral only because God commands it, and I think without any purpose or wisdom behind it. But the others took the other extreme. They said an action is moral. If it's moral. They added to the understanding of morality. They added the meaning to morality as something rational, as a rational attribute. Let's say they did not believe that it is just the fact that the thing is good, leads to pleasure or pain. That this is what makes it moral. Okay. And so Ibn Taymiyyah, he says that, as I said, that things which are moral, okay, they lead to pleasure, and things which are immoral, they lead to pain, okay. And the reason, the role of revelation is to let me read it exactly as he says it. Let me read it exactly as he says it.
Obviously not.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Listen to this, Rob.
Are you still there?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here. Ibn Taymiyyah asserts, okay, that God's command is directed towards the wise purpose, hikmah, and mercy of promoting human benefits. You're right. God commanded and prohibited according to his benefits and detriments in the. Okay, so he believed in wise purposes. Likewise, God raised up messengers to bring benefits and reduce detriments. Okay. Beyond this, the Shaykh identifies 3 types of divine command. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, the thing
types,
fruitful.
Speaks about. I found something very beautiful about this, Rob. That when a person, for example, is before at a time where no prophet came to him, okay, he will understand lying is bad and stealing is bad. So I don't see how it could be used as an argument to say that because morality, because we have objective morality, therefore God. This is like a new invention. It's not anything which was understood by the people before. I don't think they use it in this way as they do today.
Is that
yes, yeah. I listened to the person who was speaking before. Who was the first person? He spoke
Michael.
a lot.
Michael is back
about,
with us.
Michael, still there?
Michael, are you still there?
Still there?
I am. Yep.
Just make you a bit louder.
Michael?
You've gone soft.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I listened to a lot of things you said about like, for example, you said that objective morality is like, it's as if, I don't know whether you made this, are you saying that objective morality is not possible? You define objective morality as when a thing is moral in all situations.
No, I didn't define it in that way. What I said is that in order for something to be objective, an objective moral law, that it cannot be in any other way. You cannot question it and you cannot see it any other way. That is the nature of objective. I'm going to give you a question. Can 1 + 1 be anything but 2?
Can you repeat the definition? Can you repeat the definition again, please?
What I'm trying to say here is that objective morality is where it cannot be any other way and it cannot be questioned.
It can't be questioned.
But that's the nature.
How I understand objective means that it is truly as such. So when you say objectively good to speak the truth in this situation, in most situations.
Okay, I'm willing to concede your definition, but I'm not concerned with objective morality. I think the notion of objective morality does not work. It is not a good moral position. It's not a good position.
Objective morality.
Yes.
Which is that lying is forbidden, for example, in all situations.
That's right. Why is that a good thing?
Oh, well, I don't believe it's a good thing. I believe that.
But 1 second. Therefore, you don't believe in objective morality.
I don't know what objective. If a thing is objective, as I understand it, it means that it is true. It is objective, as in like true.
No, it doesn't have to be true, because once upon a time, it was an objective thought that the land was that the earth was flat. they learn otherwise. So obviously at that time it was an objective truth, but it clearly wasn't true. Mathematics in itself is the only objectivity we have in the world. 1 + 1 could never be anything but 2. It's very unlikely that will change. When you say that morality is objective, 1 second please. When you say that morality is objective, what you're saying is that this moral law cannot be any other way.
I think the challenge we have here, though, is agreeing on what the word objective means.
I disagree with your definition of objective.
Yeah, there we go. That's going to be
that's
going to be
neither
the
here
problem.
nor there to me. Then that's neither here nor there to me, because whether you disagree with my definition of objective or not is irrelevant, because it's very simple. Objective is about the object in question and which we're talking about. If we say that 1 + 1 is 2, that is an objective statement. It is very unlikely there is a subjective way of looking at this. You cannot say, so it is something, a statement which cannot be any other way. So when you say morality is objective, it doesn't matter whether it's true, good, or bad. What you're saying is it cannot be any other way. That is the term objective. If not, what you're saying is it's subjective, because I look at this and I question whether it's true or good.
Yeah, but something. Yeah.
But just tell you, I don't
we
believe
can have a
that.
battle here accepting the word objective. Then I think everybody's going to have their own definition of objective.
We're going round in circles.
Yes, we are. But if we have our own definition of objective, but if
just
we
to make a clear point, if that were the case, then nothing is
there is
morality. Then nothing will be objective. So
I'm okay with that.
Yes, but okay.
I'm okay with that.
Matter.
That's the point.
Because
I'm okay
morality, the same action can be moral in one situation, and then another situation can be immoral.
Yeah, but I'm okay with that. You're missing what I'm saying. The problem here is you think somehow now by saying that it's objective that it's better. No, it's not.
Can you repeat what you said?
Sorry?
Can you repeat what you said? Because I don't know, the connection is not very good to me.
What I'm saying is that sometimes lying, the term thou shalt not lie, sometimes lying is the only right thing to do. So then when they say thou shalt not lie, well, no, I will lie in some scenarios. So it cannot be objectively wrong. It cannot be.
Yes, but there can be exceptions to this.
But then it's not objective.
Law.
Then it's not objective. You could go round in circles on this, but if there's exceptions, it's not objective.
Can I ask a question to Pluto?
Pluto, it's Plato.
Plato, but yeah, it's Michael. But go ahead. Yes, hi, Abdel. Go ahead.
Hi guys. Yeah, I had a feeling it was gonna generate.
Please,
Is that
Abdulaziz, please.
Is that an objective feeling?
Continue this for a while, and then you can go out, and then you finish. Please, brother.
Okay.
No, let him ask the question.
Carry on there. Carry on, Abdel.
All right. All right. So, Plato, you walk into a subway station and somebody's mugging, I don't know, a 16-year-old girl. What do you think?
Pretty?
Pardon me?
Is she pretty?
She's very pretty.
Oh, I don't like pretty girls.
Oh, that was good.
Where's your point? I walk into the subway station. I see somebody mugging a 16-year-old girl. I don't understand your point.
My point is, what do you do?
Well, I call the police.
But who are you to intervene in a natural mugging?
There is nothing natural about mugging.
No, hang on. Hang on, this is exactly the point that he's saying. He's not intervening because we don't know who the girl is, what she's done, what the situation is. And if you don't know what the situation is, you go and call the police so that they can establish what the facts are before anyone intervenes. This is the whole point.
Okay, cool. Calling the police. What is that based upon?
Listen. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to cut you here. This has nothing to do with ethics and morality. Whether, to me, if I see someone mugging anybody, I do the right thing, which is to call the police. You can't possibly say that to not intervene is okay. This is a strange scenario you're putting forward.
Okay, what he's asking though, Michael,
Okay.
if I understand what he's asking is, why is it good to call the police? On what basis are you making it good? Is it your personal opinion? Is there something telling you in your ear? What is it that is telling you that that's a good thing as opposed to walking past? Why is walking past not good and calling the police good?
Fair enough. That's a much better way of putting it. Thank you. Because I am of the belief that sometimes to do, even though we don't, I think it's an ethical thing to at least, if you think there is harm going on, to prevent it in a legal manner. In this case, it would be calling the police. Now, if I were to intervene myself, I may be making the situation worse. I've misread this situation, so on and so forth. It may have not been a mugging. Maybe she mugged him. God knows. And he's trying to get his wallet.
Okay, because for me, if I believed in
we don't know. Please.
Okay, if I believed in subjective morality or subjective or whatever, either or, it doesn't really matter. It's based on how the individual feels. Calling the police, not intervening, joining the mugger, or just idly watching it play out in front of you is acceptable, either or, because it's subjective. There is no wrong.
I don't agree. I don't agree with this. I don't agree with that at all. Sorry.
No, but that's what subjective morality would boil down to. No,
but I don't believe in subjective morality.
So you believe in a form of moral relativism based on criteria of some. Yes, no.
No, you didn't listen to what I spoke at the beginning of the program. That's the issue here. I believe that there is a notion of morality, but our judgments according to the morality will make ethical standpoints. So I could see I make decisions according to the moral law, according to the situation, and those are ethical judgments.
Okay, but what are you basing it on is his question though, Michael. What are you basing that on? Is it do you smell the wind and you go, because the wind is blowing in the southerly direction, I'll make this choice, and if the wind was blowing northerly, I'd make that choice. What are you making the basis of your decisions on?
Thank you. So I base it on several things. One, I look at what would give the individual the maximum happiness and the least pain. What would then relieve my guilt? Or avoid guilt. If I'm on the subway station and I see what I think is a mugging and I do nothing, I will be guilty. So I'd rather call the police and I'd rather intervene in that manner because I believe I'm doing the right thing at that point. So it takes away my guilt. Aristotle says that one of the key things that stops us from being happy is guilt. And I would relieve my guilt. Now, if I've called the police without reason, that's for them to decide.
Okay, but presumably somebody like Bell's question might be to you, well, okay, Michael, so you walk past and you feel guilty. Another person walks past and they do not feel guilty. Why are you morally correct and they are morally wrong? Or are they also just as morally correct as you, the person that doesn't feel guilty, doesn't call the police and walks past, or in fact gets involved and goes, do you know what I think is moral is giving this person a slap because it makes me feel good. So what basis have you got for saying that yours is moral and the other person is immoral? That's presumably where he would eventually go down to.
Fair enough. Now, I am of the belief that if you see something which is clearly wrong and you don't act and you don't even feel guilt on any type of guilt, I think there's an issue here.
But the other person could say the same to you. I think, Michael, the fact that you intervened there is morally incorrect. The other person would say my moral compass says to me to walk past, not to get involved, because it could actually be that the woman provoked him, and so he's responding in a morally ethical way, which is giving her a good slap so she won't do it again. Now, how would you respond to that person and tell them they were wrong?
Can you repeat that? You spoke too fast.
Sorry. You're saying that it's that you would feel guilty and it's the right thing to do. And presumably Abdul might ask you, okay, but the person that walks past and either doesn't get involved or goes there and gives her a slap as well, because he feels that most women are very cheeky, and in fact the slap is what will send them correct, and therefore that's the moral thing, because what we need is women who obey their men, and therefore giving them a slap is more likely to help her obey men. So actually that's the morally good point. How are you going to argue against that person? What are you going to say to that person to say, no, you're wrong?
Well, the way I see the initial question was that someone was mugging a girl, and if someone wants to stand back and knows that there's a mugging going on and they don't want to intervene in any shape or form, I think issues going on here.
Sorry to cut you off. What I was trying to say, I mean, the mugging scenario is really irrelevant. I'm just trying to say well, I presume that you were of the subjective type that believes in subjective moralism, but I was trying to make an example of.
No.
I know. Now I know. Sorry. I made an ass out of myself for assuming. But no, what I was trying to say, it doesn't make sense to have subjective morality. Anything.
No, morals are subjective. What I believe are subjective are ethical judgments on the moral law.
No, but what determines that? What determines that? Well, I mean,
one at a time, guys. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah, what I was trying to say, what determines that ultimately, an intrinsic good, something that we understand to be good, then if that's the case, it cannot be subjective morality nor relative morality. It must be a form of objective morality if everybody knows what it means to behave in a good manner.
No. First, may I point out, I've already stated that I believe there is a sense of objective morality, particularly if you believe there is a moral giver. Now, what I'm saying is that the moral law to me is irrelevant. It's the ethical judgments that I make on the moral law. And there is a sense of what is right. Let's go back to Aristotle. He said that the purpose of life is to spread happiness. He then says, how do we spread happiness? By being ethical. Now, if I see what I think is a mugging going on, I will call the police, because one, it alleviates my guilt. Two, it may stop a mugging. So that sense of happiness has been spread. Now, if we then say, well, there is no moral law that says I have to intervene here, well, I think that's a strange situation to be in.
Yeah, but somebody could argue against that, Michael, and quite happily. And Abdul could say, "Hey, Allah says that life is a test. So, when you go through hardship, at the end you feel good, and therefore that's the right thing." So, the woman that's getting potentially mugged, for example, I'm not saying Abdul would say this, but somebody could say, "Hey, she's going through a test, and at the end of that, she'll have a valuable lesson, and therefore it is moral to allow the mugger to continue because she will have a test at the end."
Yep.
She should take Taekwondo.
Well, if anything, do Wing Chun is better. However, I understand the test issue, the idea of she's been tested and we're all being tested and so on and so forth. But I could turn around and say, maybe I'm being tested. Maybe I witnessed that mugging in order for me to call the police. Maybe I'm being tested in order to intervene as I see rightly. So,
Interesting you say that, because that reminds me of some things that I was reading about intentions within classical Islamic thought. Some of the material that I came across is that the intentions is what God ultimately judges you on, your personal intentions. So, I mean, from an Islamic standpoint, classical Islamic standpoint, that's pretty close to what Muslims would be teaching is what you feel. Like if you feel that you have to stand up and say something, and if you don't, you're not staying true to your intentions, so to speak, and God will hold you accountable for that in a cosmic judgment. Yeah, I understand. But if you were to say something, at least, you would be, what do you call it? Staying true to your intentions. That makes you sincere. Therefore, God will reward you for that in the afterlife. Something like that.
Yeah, that's a problem. That's a problem for you, Abdel. Because if the Quran says something and you feel that you want to stand up for your ethics that contradicts the Quran, what happens now?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you would I don't know, you would have to give me an example.
Okay, so let's say you believe that the unnecessary suffering of animals is immoral, and you see somebody halal slaughter an animal that suffers and dies in front of you, and it takes 2 minutes to die. Or you see that it's going to, he does that, and then he's going to attack another, he's going to do it with another animal. You've seen the pain and suffering that animal's gone through for 2 minutes to die because he hasn't got a sharp knife and it doesn't die instantly, for example. Now, you know that unnecessary suffering of animals is wrong. Are you going to stop him? Because if you stop him, you are going against the let's say the law of Islam, for example, in the sense, not the law of Islam, but in the sense of like using Eid as an example. So you're slaughtering the animal because you are, following the example after Abraham didn't sacrifice his son. So now you have a situation where you know that unnecessary suffering is a bad thing, but at the same time, this particular person is slaughtering these animals as per the instruction, let's say. So what do you do in that situation? Because if you stop him, you're now going against potentially the Quran, Hadith, whatever it is. And if you don't do it, you're going against your own personal ethics, which is, preventing unnecessary suffering of animals.
Yeah, that's only, we have to assume that the Quran says having a suffering animal is what God wants. And we also have to assume that I don't espouse to that, for example. But I get what you're trying to say. The best thing, honestly, is to speak up if you feel something is bothering you in general. For example, just say if I read a hadith that says don't let the animal suffer, and I see an imam slaughtering the animal above its Adam's apple, and it's causing it tremendous pain, or he's trying to kill it, the ethical thing is to tell the imam that you don't know what you're doing, you're incompetent, and you need to take a seat. You just brought needless suffering to an animal. But, since you brought up the subject matter of animal slaughter, it's assumed that, that Muslims enjoy animal slaughter because of the amount of meat we consume or whatnot. But, I mean, if you look at it from dietary laws, it's assumed no animal is fit for consumption unless sacrificed, and the sacrificed animal has to fit a few characteristics. And one can almost argue that Muslims naturally should be vegetarians. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I mean, if you read Islamic dietary laws, it begins with the presumption that all meat is forbidden for consumption unless it's slaughtered. This is the difference. But now we have a culture where, 1.6 billion Muslims enjoy the consumption of meat, and they want it on a daily basis, which is, part of the modern industrial.
What other meat are you going to have that's not slaughtered? Are you talking about like roadkill? I mean, how many people are going to eat roadkill? Almost nobody. So what you're talking about is virtually all the meat that all Muslims eat is presumably slaughtered animals.
Well, I'll give you an example. I mean, if you go to a halal slaughter facility, it's about it processes like 5,000 heads of cattle. Apparently they have, like, I don't know, in the background, somebody playing Bismillah every time the knife goes by, a chicken's head, or, there's somebody that continuously says Bismillah while another person is slaughtering an animal to meet the demands of modern meat consumption. I mean, this is totally like where, Islamic dietary laws and mass agriculture, crash. I mean, if you think about it, you know, the halal market industry, it shouldn't exist if Muslims adhere to their strict dietary laws, because I mean, they have to go through some kind of a legal Sharia loop, you know, to say that, you know, mass industrial slaughter is Islamically compliant, if you will.
Let me stop you there for a moment. Stops, are you there?
Yeah, falling asleep.
I mean, if you want to, you know,
I don't know where this is going. Okay, we're talking about 8,000 cows or something, but it doesn't, to me, give me any kind of direction where we're going with this. I don't know what to do with this.
No,
Can I
that's
ask a
fine.
question?
I know this is not maybe your topic as much, Stops. So, I mean, if you want to leave at this point, that's not a problem. I know that the morality thing is not really your thing. The only question I want to ask you is, what was your understanding? Because Abel says that, you know, Abdullah, I think, or Abdel, I think it is, basically says that the Islamic requirements, and obviously you've got some thoughts on the Islamic requirements, as in, like, what does it say in the hadith of the Quran about slaughter of animals? Can Muslims be, for example, vegans?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. So they could actually do that, right? Okay.
Can I ask a question?
You can. I just want to check. I mean, Stops, you know, if you feel this is going nowhere and you are sleepy, and totally understand, I'll let it run for a little while, but I know it's maybe not your favorite topic. So up to you entirely if you want to stay with us or not on this one.
No, because we're going round in circles, repeating. Just the numbers change a little bit, but it's not really, you know, nobody is saying, okay, this is what I still didn't understand. Abdel, are you propagating that absolute, objective, total, whatever morality exists or should exist, or I don't quite understand your position.
Well, my position is anything less than objective morality falls short. You know, I mean, like, if you look at the alternative arguments to selective morality or relativism, morality based on relativism, it just falls short. You know, you wouldn't have a fully functioning society based on these philosophies. I mean, it's almost like out of necessity, you need to believe in an objective morality where you can have the vast majority of people operating in a manner where they believe they're doing the good thing. You feel me?
So
I'm not going to play the game now. Give me something, blah, blah, blah. Where does it come from?
What I said? I mean, that's mainly, I believe that's mainly Western thought.
No.
I mean,
where does this objectivity come from?
If you want, well, I mean, objectivity, I mean, in this, like, okay, like I gave the example. Okay, let's just say I murder somebody. I commit a crime. Am I just in committing that crime? Like,
who knows? This is exactly the point that I'm trying to make. With your example, with the girl being mugged on the platform somewhere, we do not know. It might well be that this is a policeman who is actually arresting her. We might have other reasons or other situations. It is just that to us at the moment, it might look as though she is being mugged. Maybe she's not being mugged. So who is going to give you the objectivity that this is something not good?
Okay. Like, this is a very good thing. Somebody is getting attacked. You know, you have to have a sense, like the basic thing, you should feel that this is wrong. This act of violence is wrong.
I just told you there are situations where the same situation could be absolutely 100% correct and right and something good.
Yeah, but I mean, it's irrelevant. Like, I'll give you an example.
One time, irrelevant.
No, I'll give you an example.
Let's stay with this example. Let's stay with it. You see, this is what I don't like, because we're always running around and then we do the next one. The point was, you brought an example of a girl being mugged. And I just said, okay, how does that relate to objective morality? And you said, well, if somebody is getting mugged, it should be wrong. But I'm telling you, it could be your misinterpretation of the situation.
Okay, but stop.
It could actually be correct. It could be something good. So how do you take the objectivity?
Okay, but hang on a moment before you answer, Abdul. Stops. There's two different things here. I think you are asking the question. Well, how do we know objectively whether what he's suggesting is going on? That's one way of looking at it. But what he's really doing is he's putting forward this hypothetical that it is happening, that we all accept it's happening. So normally when this is put forward, we are not questioning whether in fact it's happening or not. We are accepting that it's happening, and then we're going, okay, what do we do about it? So there's two different things going on here.
Okay. All right, and then if you have a situation, now you need to build some stupid examples where it's okay to eat a baby because you're stuck in the Andes and the snow in a plane crash and there is no whatever inside. So then under those circumstances, it's okay to eat a baby. The same way as it could be okay to rape a 16-year-old because blah, blah, blah. And now you're creating stupid situations. This is why I am saying, where does this objectivity come from that you require objectivity? Why not just leave it at morality? Why do you need objective morality instead of just keeping it at morality, which changes over time, which is governed by society, which is governed by interaction between human beings and between what we bring up ourselves?
Well, obviously, what he's going to say, though, Stops, or what fears typically say is, hey, because if you've got a subjective morality, you never know if it's going to be right. Today it's the right, tomorrow it's different. I mean, who knows? If somebody else says it's okay to do something, who are you as Stops or me as Rob to say they're wrong? How do we establish, if one person says, having a baby for breakfast is good, and somebody else goes, no, I'll have, scrambled eggs, who's to say they're wrong? So what is our basis for saying that? That's the question that he's asking. He's saying, if it's subjective, you don't have a basis. And he's saying, no, but I have got a basis. And so the question to him is, what is your basis, Abdul, for saying that eating a baby for breakfast is wrong as opposed to having scrambled egg? What is the basis? Not just your feelings.
Well, okay, but then it's going to go back to this God. But then if I look at the morality of this God, I see this is a morality. It's a monster. Because this God gives people slavery, it gives misogyny, it gives all sorts of things. So how can you base your morality, your well-being of the entire nation and society on what this God defines as being good, when it is absolutely, thoroughly bad? So, it only leads to one thing. It always has to be based on God. How do you base this on God? Well, you have to look at the Quran. Well, if you look at the Quran, it's terrible. And then I should go and consider a God based on the Quran as the objective morality giver? No way.
Just mute yourself there, Michael. Abdel, do you want to respond there?
Yes, well, what I wanted to say was, when you look at a situation, and I ask the audience to be objective about the girl getting mugged, how do you be objective is, what are the possible things you can do in a situation where a girl is being mugged? And the best the best thing to do would be to intervene. I mean, you have a myriad of things you can do, which is call the police.
Oh, he's gone. What happened there? And so is Michael. I wonder if they're on mobile phones or something. James, are you still there?
Yes, I survived the unexpected purge.
What's your thoughts on this? Do you think there's some kind of objective morality? If you don't, what do you think?
I'm not sure. I'm going to stay agnostic on the issue.
Okay. Fair enough.
But one thing I do kind of quite like to think about is that if it turned out that morality was just something invented by human beings, like thought of by human beings, and it wasn't sort of an inherent part of the universe, or it didn't match any of the other kind of criteria that people normally associate with objective, then I'd ask myself, how would that influence my behavior? Would it make me suddenly feel like, oh, it's okay to kind of steal or rape or that sort of thing? And it seems to me that the answer is, in general, is no, basically. And I think even if morality is subjective, we've come up with a pretty sort of good system, even though that whole concept of good might have been something that kind of human beings have just kind of created themselves. So even in the worst case scenario, let's say, where morality is just something we invented by ourselves, just some sort of behavior. Like, that's not the worst thing in the world. And if we shouldn't, like, often kind of Muslims like to kind of, they don't say this out loud, but they often like act as though once they get a atheist to say, well, morality is subjective, then they'll act as though that person has just said, yeah, in the future it'll be okay to kind of kill whenever you please and do this and that and start raping and pillaging, and as long as it makes you feel good, or all this other kind of nonsense. And if someone thinks that, and that just says what their behavior would be if they ever found out that there is no God, basically. Like, it just says that they're not very moral, because if they ever kind of realize that their religion was made up, then they, according to them, they have no other kind of internal moral compass that they can reliably turn to. And so kind of, because if they think that atheists are just like just a couple of years away from descending into total anarchy because there's no other reason to act in a sociable or kind, just way, then that's them being on kind of shaky footing.
Well, what would you say though, James? So if a theist challenged you and said, James, well, why can't you go and rape and pillage? What's stopping you from doing it? What is it about rape and pillage that is wrong to you, James?
It's basically in its most fundamental terms, it's an intuition. It feels wrong, and maybe the source of that intuition does have a divine origin. I am agnostic. And maybe the source of that intuition is just a behavior that we evolved through evolution because we're social animals, and some of these behaviors might be useful for us to pass on our genes. I'm not sure, but I think we just need to kind of ask. Yeah, I think it's better to focus on, well, how would that affect our behavior? And if we did, if there was no, if it was just a evolutionary kind of byproduct, then would we really kind of start behaving like awful kind of marauders once we found out that? I mean, that just kind of that just paints whoever thinks that is probably like a slightly dangerous person.
Okay, well, maybe I think I'm not here, and Michael did say it initially, but let me read you this short bit here, and then we can go from there, or finish off, or whatever the case is. Because what I notice is it's very difficult when I hear my fellow atheists talk about this as to what it is they base it on. And so here's the simple premise, and this comes from the moral landscape. The very simple premise is human well-being, and that's the part that we can probably talk about, we can bold that, entirely depends on events in the world and on states of the human brain. Consequently, there must be scientific truths to be known about it. Now, this was Harris's original challenge to everybody on Earth. That was the central premise of his challenge originally on the morals landscape, and said, show me that that's wrong. Because if you agree with that and a couple of other premises, then I have an objective standard. And the biggest challenge came about well-being, human well-being. Well, who's to say that human well-being is the premise that we should be talking about? But if you accept that human well-being is in fact the premise, which I believe it is, i.e. that's what morals and ethics is about, if we were all rocks, we would not have ethics, we would not have well-being. So well-being refers to obviously how well we can live or how much we can suffer. And it depends on events within the world and states of the human brain. I don't think there's any dispute on that, unless somebody's going to claim, and they have evidence, that in fact it doesn't depend on that, it depends on some kind of spiritual experience. But there's no evidence of that. So anybody that makes that claim, I think they've got a mountain to climb to show that that's the case. And if it does in fact depend on events in the world and states of the human brain, then in principle, we have scientific truths that can be known about it. And if we have those things, now we can say, if we're accepting this as a premise, now we can say we have something that is an objective foundation from which to start. Now, the theist could challenge one or more parts of these, but if the theist accepted this, then they would accept that we have a a foundation. So every time we talk about any example, use the example with the what do you call it, where there's the mugging going on. Why would we intervene? Because we want to assist in the well-being of that person that is being mugged. She hasn't given permission, he or she hasn't given permission. The other person is affecting their well-being. And even if that person who was affecting their well-being went, do you know what, it's for my well-being, we could still step in and go, no, her well-being without her permission would override your well-being. And we could show that from a, let's call it, scientific view, given this premise. So I will leave it with you to see whether, you know, you have anything to say about that.
Yes, that's exactly right. That's exactly what I think. That's exactly what I say. And I don't think there's any need to go into absolutes.
Does anybody else want to comment on this?
I think what you just said was very, very nice. I mean, I find it hard that anybody would disagree with what you defined it as.
And if that is the case, then though, Abdel, then in what sense do we need the Quran or a God or anything else? It seems to me that Occam's razor says those are not required in any sense. They don't add anything to morality or ethics. And if you agree with any of that, then you would agree that we can have an objective standard without God. And if you agree that a non-believer can have an objective standard without God, then God, it seems to me, is an addition to this that we don't require.
Well, first, I never made the claim that all morality, you know, originates from God's mouth, you know, like as in orders or anything like that. I mean, I was talking about objective morality using a certain criteria where we all intrinsically understand.
You've dropped off again. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Kind of. Try again.
How about now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, what I was trying to allude to was good behavior and bad behavior is intrinsic to us. We can determine that. I never.
Can we determine that without God?
Yeah, you don't. Look, you don't need like God in your life in the sense like He's speaking to you to be able to determine it.
Okay, so in what sense do we need God to determine any moral or ethical actions? What sense do we need God?
I mean, like there are some things where we turn to God because we need Him. Yeah, you know, like
give me an ethical or moral situation where you have to turn to God and we can't use reason or the states of the human brain and science to come to an answer. Give me an example.
It would be very hard to come up with an example right on the spot, but if you give me a minute, I'm pretty sure I can. But what I was trying to say is I never personally made the claim that all morality originates from God. I was trying to say we understand what good and bad is intrinsically. We know it to be the case. Now, people make the claim that originates from God. That intrinsic understanding of what good and bad originates from God. This is what people make the claim. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, but I don't think they've got a basis for making that claim. That's just an assertion that doesn't have any good reasons or evidence for it. And if that is the case, then we can dispense with that claim and say it's an unwarranted assumption. Occam's razor says that, as you've agreed, that if we have an intrinsic thing, if we have an intrinsic knowledge, let's say, of what's right and wrong, then appealing to something outside of that is superfluous and therefore of no value, doesn't add anything whatsoever, and we can dismiss that. So what you would have to do as a theist is go, no, Rob, you can't do that. Here is a situation, or here is something where you have to appeal to God. In fact, you'd have to do that for everything, because if you only did it for one or two things, then that means God is only good for a few things, and we can dismiss God in every other situation. So for you as a theist, it seems to me, you are stuck in the position of having to say everything originates with God. He is the sole thing. We have to look to God to see whether whatever we are doing is moral or immoral. Because if you don't need to appeal to your God, then there's certain things that God is not required or needed for, in which case your God is kind of, I'll pick and choose when I need God, and other things I will make my own decisions because I think it comes internally. And then you don't have objective morality, it seems to me.
Well, what I was going to say was nobody asks God's permission to step out of the house, right?
That's not
Most
a moral act.
I know it's not a moral act, but
So why would you need that permission?
I was trying to make a point, but sure, let's just bring it back to morality. We don't need to ask God, hey, should we intervene with the mugging of this girl? We intrinsically know it, but we attribute the goodness, like Rob said, to God, and which he makes the claim that we are saying that's an assertion. But I think that Rob doesn't appreciate the fact that there's so many things going on. It's very hard to describe it in a couple of sentences. I mean, he would have to give me a minute and I would try to answer it again. I can't answer it right now as we speak.
Okay,
Can I ask you a question, Abdul?
Yeah, go ahead, James. Go ahead.
Have you ever, while reading either the Quran, well, especially the Quran, but maybe also Hadith, have you ever read anything that conflicted with your sense of morality? And if so, how did you resolve it? Because I have a little example like that you might find interesting.
Well, when I was when I was younger, I didn't like the idea of war, so to speak, right? So when I was reading the narrations of the military campaigns of the early Muslims, I felt like that this kind of conflicts with my understanding of what I thought would be like a holy movement, so to speak. But it's similar to like a child, I'll give you an example, a very short one. If I were a child and when I want food, I would cry and my parents would give me food, but I would never see my parents cry. And so I would make, and from my perspective, the logical conclusion that parents don't cry, for example, right? So it's illogical, but it's based from like an ignorance of many factors, right? So after reading more and more and understanding military tradition, sometimes on the battlefield, the moral thing to do is to defeat your enemy. So,
but I still don't see, Abdul. I still don't see how you've answered James' question. He said, have you had a conflict at some point in your life where you felt something was ethically or morally correct and the Quran said no it wasn't, or vice versa, and how did you deal with that? How is the example you've given? I don't see how that example...
Well, honestly, for me, everything that I have read, if I didn't understand it, I would try to get more information about it, and it seems logical and it makes sense in the end when I research it.
Okay, so really what you're saying is, even if you had a conflict, you'd go and look for an example, you'd go and look for some interpretation or somebody to tell you that in fact the Quran is correct and here's how it's correct, and it matches your intuition. So you'd somehow try and find a way to avoid the conflict or contradiction.
No, I wouldn't say I try to avoid the conflict. I try to find a resolution to the conflict, and it makes sense in the end for me every single time.
Okay, so you've never had an opportunity where your ethics says no. There's, for example, slavery. You haven't found a way, or what happens where slavery is condoned in the Quran and never abolished, and you've found some way to say that that's okay, that's the best message that a God could have sent through. Somehow you find a way to make that okay for you.
Well, we talked about this before and it wasn't acceptable, but in my humble opinion, I believe that they're still slaves, and I believe there will...
No, we've lost you there. I don't know. Yeah. I think you bringing up what I would consider a red herring, which is you trying to say economic slavery or something, which nobody So that's yes, we're going to reject that because that's a red herring. What we talk about with slavery is of one human being owning another one, as slavery has always been understood to mean throughout history, is the owning of some human being where they don't have a choice, where they can't leave under threat of incredible punishment or death or something like that. So they own, like I own a mule or a donkey, I own a human being. That's what slavery is traditionally known as, not somebody who's working for somebody.
No, I know, but like a slave is also a status in a society. And if you look at, if there's more than 5 people in any given area, somebody is going to be turned into the omega male, so to speak, or the going to be put on a lesser status. It's the natural hierarchy of man to put people in lower positions. You want to name them working class, slave class, whatever, peasant class, feudal class, serf class. The relationship remains the same. A person on the top and people beneath that power structure,
Yeah, but that's different to slavery, though. The person at the top of that power structure is not owning any of the other human beings. I think let's move away from that because I think there's a lot of confusion in my eyes from what you're saying there. So we move away from that. Otherwise, we're going to go somewhere else. James,
yeah, out of interest, Abdulaziz, when you had these kind of conflicts, did you find it more useful in general to go to a traditionalist kind of explanation, like you might find on a kind of Salafi website like Islam QA, or did you find it easier to resolve these kind of conflicts where kind of your sense of morality differed from what was found in the Qur'an or Sunnah? Did you find it more useful to go to a kind of more modern or kind of moderate interpretation, like you might find from someone like Mufti Abu Layth or Shabir Ali?
Honestly, when I go to Salafi websites, their explanations are very disappointing. I mean, to be very honest with you, very disappointing explanation. So they turn me off. I mean, the more modern scholars that are still traditionalists, but they are modern and perspective, and I tend to listen to them more because it's more intellectually stimulating than going to a Salafi website, because I'm telling you, some of the explanations, man, will make you laugh.
Yeah, they'll often just say, like I was listening in Speaker's Corner to someone maybe in your position a little bit. He was asking this person in Speaker's Corner called Shamsi, like about kind of the practice of taking slaves in war or war captives, and Shamsi said to him, yes, it seems very bad, of course, but remember, when you take their families captive, remember, these are the enemies of the Muslims, and if you take their families captive, then they will not want to make war with the Muslims. So you see, by doing this, the Muslims were able to prevent war. So you see how it is good, yeah? And so, like, yeah, sometimes I will just come up with, absolutely chauvinistic kind of, it's good when we do it, but it's bad when other people do it. It's kind of, you come up with some very crazy, brazen explanations to try and make behavior in, hadith reports and so on seem moral.
Well, when it comes to the events of the past, I never try to explain them. I just try to state them as facts. I mean, Muslims did take slaves. But the line that I draw is that if there's any Muslim that says, hey, we can still take slaves like we did in the 6th century, I just tell them, they're absolutely wrong, and you can't just,
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, but why are they wrong, Abdul? Where does it say that you can't do that anymore?
No, because there's a better way, a more efficient way, an industrial.
Yes, where are you getting that information from?
I mean, listen, times have changed, but
We've lost you again at the critical moment. Hello?
Would I be able to screen share a little bit? I've never tried this before.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so long as let's see, share entire screen.
Dropped off again, so maybe you had a bad connection again.
Okay.
Stops,
Oh,
I'm
he's
sure-
dropped
I'm
off.
sure- just before you carry on, Stops, I'm sure that you're bored out of your skull. Yes, if you want to leave us at this point, I'm sure we'll find a hadith that we can do.
I'm going to soldier through. No.
Okay, and I don't want you to. If it was a
It's
painful
just
topic
that
for me.
we're running around. We're running around. There's nothing really useful that we're getting out of this. This is the whole point. We're not going to convince Abdel of anything. Abdel thinks he's got a point, but I don't think he has. So we're not really going anywhere.
Yeah, I don't think he's got a point either. He's trying to split the difference here, as James
Exactly.
has sort of pointed out
Yeah,
here.
but the funny thing is that even somebody, like Abdel, who will go and actually go and tell the Salafis to go and lump it, he still has this I don't know, this ingrained thinking that there is some good coming out of his God, and this is what always amazes me.
Yeah, because he's back with us now, but he said slavery, whatever slavery was in those days, we don't have today. And my question was, well, where do you get that information that slavery of those days, if you can even consider it good in those days, is not good today? Where is that information? Is it in the hadiths, the Quran? Is it in his own personal, subjective, ethical, moral system? Where is that information that slavery from the 6th century is no longer good today? You're back with us, Abdul, so maybe you can answer that question. Where is it that you get that information from?
I get it from the natural evolution of our common human history. I mean, history doesn't stay in the 6th century of Arabia.
I'm glad to hear you say that. And essentially, what you're saying is that we have something that's better than the Quran. Then
no, well, okay. Look, who were pioneers of slavery? The ancient Egyptians, and who took the relay race, the torch, and made it better. The Romans, and who made it better than the Romans? We could say the Muslims, and who made it better than the Muslims? The Europeans, and who made it better than the Europeans? The Americans.
Sorry, this is irrelevant.
Yeah, I think that's a bit of a red herring there, Abdul, because really what you would need to claim is, hey, here's where it says, or here's where I believe that the slavery that was practiced by Muhammad and the people of his time is no longer valid today. Here it says it in the Quran, here it says it in the Hadiths, or here's the reasons. And if you appeal outside of that, then you are by default saying that there's something outside the Quran and the Hadiths that is better than the Quran and the Hadiths because it's now shown you something about slavery that is no longer acceptable.
This is it's interesting because sometimes I get into these types of arguments with the Salafis because they're the ones that sometimes are adamant about it being permissible to take slaves the same way that who they claim their predecessors did, but
how do you convince them they're wrong?
I mean, they're inherently wrong. It's if you take just common knowledge, just where we are today in history, very few people can live without the technology and the modern comforts of today. And I'm talking about comforts, but let's talk about what is considered normal. What's considered normal is not to take your neighbor as a slave.
We didn't get that though from the Quran, did we? So we've improved on the Quran. So you're not using the Quran.
Hold on though, Rob. It does say in the Quran, there's a reward for freeing slaves. So they're able to focus on that part of the scripture, basically. So it isn't like they just kind of came up with it, entirely by themselves. Like they're able to find scriptural justification for it. So
you can free slaves, sure, but you didn't abolish them. And if you look at Muhammad's example, he traded in slaves. So clearly, then Muhammad is not the person to be following. So now you need to cherry pick a verse from the Quran and go, okay, what I'm going to take from this verse is that you can free all slaves. In which case, maybe Muhammad needed to know that at his time, and he either didn't know that or God didn't want to tell him that.
If you look at the slave, let's analyze the slave and their position in society. If we just analyze
why do we have to do that?
Because so I can draw commonalities to some people that live in those same conditions today.
No.
You've dropped off there, Michael.
You can't do that. there may be people in a very bad position today, but they could leave that position. There's a possibility of making a choice. A slave could even live in a palace, but the minute you say, but you cannot leave, he's a slave. You're taking his free will away. So the connection is not the same. You can't just say there's people in poverty, so it's like being a slave. No, it's not the same.
No, that's true. You're drawing a false equivalence there.
No, but I wasn't even referring to the people that live in poverty. I was referring to the people who think that they are free, but in fact they are trapped within a social power structure that they're either willfully ignorant of or naive.
Give me an example.
Well, an example would be you buy a house, right? But you never really technically own that house. You can only keep that house if you can make mortgage payments and the property tax payments.
Yeah, but you could become a homeless if you wish. It may not be a wise choice.
Yeah, but the thing that I was going to say, why is it that we have to pay for homes?
No, this is irrelevant. This is irrelevant. That's irrelevant.
Yeah, it really is. Michael, I don't think we're going to go anywhere here because Abdel has got in his mind that today there's something that he wants to call slavery, which none of us would recognize as slavery. And I think if we dig deep enough, we'd probably get Abdel to admit it's not slavery either. But I think that'll take too long. And I think we're getting a difference of equivalence here in order to try and justify it. If Muhammad had said, I abolish slaves, I've given up all my slaves the moment I found Allah, now we'd be going, okay, he's a moral agent that we could follow because everybody was doing slavery. Muhammad spoke to Allah and Allah said, give up all your slaves because that's the most moral thing to do, and do it immediately and tell every other Muslim to do it from here on in. Now we'd have now there'd be an objective moral standard or something that we could call morally good. Of course, that didn't happen.
I'm trying to follow in the path of Muhammad and free you guys.
No, we have a mortgage.
Fortunately, we're already free, so we don't need that. James, thanks so much. James says he's got to shoot off, so thank you so much for joining us, James. I'm not sure how much longer we'll go here. We're a little bit perhaps, and then we're going to call it a day.
But let me ask Abdel my normal question. Abdel, do you think that slavery in the 21st century in Europe is something that is normal?
Slavery in the historical or what I perceive to be modern slavery that you guys reject?
Okay, let me be precise then. Do you think that slavery, in other words, going to a different country, wiping out the village, wiping out the tribe, killing all the men, taking the women, taking them back with you, raping them on the way, selling them on the slave market as objects, is that something that is good and desirable in a 21st century Europe?
No, it's not good and desirable in 21st century Europe. What's good and desirable is you go to a banana country, you topple their regime, and you
that's irrelevant. I asked the question.
You give them a petrodollar.
That's not the point. My point is, if I ask you if this is good and desirable in 21st century Europe, your answer is no. My next question is a book that propagates it desirable and welcome in the 21st century Europe?
Stops. I like you. I like you because you're very smart.
This sounds like a big but.
No, there's no but. I do like you, but I want to just draw your attention to the word propagates. Man propagates. The Quran isn't a book, right? That men pick up, read, and they propagate their ideas. Anybody that propagates slavery today should be criminalized. You know what? Should be deported from Europe. Should be deported from Europe. That's
You're going now into semantics because of the word propagate. I could have used any other word. The point that I'm trying to make is people like you are a lot better than the Islamic God. People like you are a lot more advanced, a lot more ethical than the God in Islam. This is the point that I'm trying to make. And I think if you go and you look at the Quran, and just as James was saying, yes, there is a word or two, or there's a sentence which tells us get rid of slavery or free some slavery. It never tells you do not own humans. It tells you you are allowed to go and rape females, and that's it. So if you go to the Quran and you look at the text, you must admit that they are immoral and wrong and unethical in the 21st century of Europe.
No, not just Europe, anywhere in the world, my friend.
I'm just using it as an example. No. There are some countries where you still have slavery, where they still have workers coming into the country, where they're taking away the passports. They have no option. They cannot say goodbye.
Yes. I mean, you're talking about UAE, right? Their temporary.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen them. I was there building the new airport in Qatar. What do you think the people were doing? I went and talked to them. I went to the north and I talked to the guys. It's horrific what these guys have to go through. And if you don't get an exit visa, do you know that there are people stuck in Qatar who cannot leave the country? They don't earn any money. They don't have a visa. They're not allowed to stay in the country, and they're not allowed to leave the country. They are free people. Anybody can pick them up and do with them what they want.
Imagine that.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised, and it's unfortunate. It's a bad thing.
Shocked.
Huh? No, I'm not surprised because I'm familiar with these things. I'm not surprised because I'm familiar. But
not surprised is, I don't think, the right expression for this.
Yeah.
Anyway, the point that I'm trying to make is this is according to the Quran. You are allowed to do that. The non-Muslims are the worst of all the creatures ever created, and this is why it's okay to treat certain people in a different way. And that is the way that is happening. Now, we have progressed. And I think as a member of the species, we've come, like the last 300,000 years, a very, very long way. We have made so much progress in the last 1,000 years. And now what is happening is that I see that Muslims are trying to take us back into that time. And that is where I then scream, stop. And this is why I'm doing this. This is the only reason. And now I'm looking at and seeing people like you. You are a more educated Muslim. You're not a primitive guy that you see in Qatar who's just, carrying, I don't know, stones from one place to the next. You can read, you can write. Did you know that almost 50% of Muslims are illiterate today? And yet they have a higher moral standard than the God does in the Quran.
No. Yes, they are illiterate, but the sad thing you would probably be very disappointed if I were to tell you this, but I attribute the vast majority of my morality and my ideas to the very Quran that you dislike, and you're not happy to hear that.
I'm not disappointed. No, you can't. This is exactly what James was pointing out. And we've done an entire show on this, showing exactly the positive aspects of Islam, and that there are sentences, but you need to be selective. You need to be highly selective, because it says in the Quran 105 times the non-believers are going to go to hell. You can ignore that. And you can find a sentence somewhere that you can twist and turn and say, oh no, non-believers, they will be judged by their deeds. So even a non-believer has the possibility of going to paradise. So of course,
when you say non-believer in the Arabic, you're referring to the word kuffar, right?
Yes.
Okay. So kuffar, classically understood as people who cover up the truth.
Well, don't go into these things. Don't split words. Really, it's no. Please don't.
But there is a group of people who go around and they label everybody a kuffar.
It doesn't
like
matter. It doesn't matter. The point that I'm trying to make is the Quran is horrific. The Quran is brutal. It's primitive. But there are people who can draw some positive things from it. Yes, I understand that, and it doesn't disappoint me. I think this is brilliant that people are able to do that. And there are people, I mean, look, we've got this guy who came in a couple of times from Texas. He has a huge, long criminal record, and he has found his peace in Islam. And that's wonderful. If that gives him stability, if that gives him, the sort of the structure that he needs in his life to make his life better, to be a functioning member in today's society, that's brilliant. Who am I?
You're from the UK, right, Stops? You're from the UK, right?
No, South Africa.
South Africa? Oh, okay. Do you guys have a radical problem as well?
A radical problem? What do you mean radical problem?
Like, because in the UK they have a lot of extremists. I think maybe Rob is the one that's dealing with the with the Salafis in the UK.
Myself and Michael.
Yeah.
I think everybody does. But what is the point?
Oh no, nothing. I just was wondering where you were from. I was going to say something.
This was just part of that. Okay, so what I'm saying is it's admirable that people can draw something positive from out of the Quran and get some structure and get some sense into their life, and that's brilliant. That's beautiful. That doesn't disappoint me at all. So I'm very happy that there are people who can do that. But then at the same time, I am not going to go now overboard and say everything in Islam, everything in the Quran is good, because it gives a couple of people some sort of structure in their lives. Because on the other hand, it is being used in the other direction by terrorists who then use it to justify horrific deeds. So, you have two things in the same book. So this is why I don't criticize the individual Muslims, but I criticize the bad ideas in Islam in the Quran. That is the way that it works.
We criticize the bad ideas. There's a lot of bad ideas, and people like you need to exist. 100%. There needs to be a natural balance. I sincerely believe that, because any place where people remove the option of freedom, you're going to have, like, for example, Taliban and Islamic State, and basically a fascist ideology, and that's not good for anybody. And what I mean by fascist, I mean like a totalitarian, rule by a bureaucrat type of.
That was Muhammad. This is exactly what Muhammad did. He was a monster. He was exactly the fascist monster who tried to get everybody to follow his command, and that was it. He was the king. Everybody do and worship me the same way as you worship Allah. It's the Allah and me who are bringing all the truth and all the all the rules to you. Today we know this is nonsense, but in those days, this is the way that it was working. I mean, he's the one that propagated, raping female captives is fine. Go and enjoy it. This is what Muhammad did.
I mean, this was just a byproduct of the era. I mean,
no, it's not the byproduct. No. Okay, now we are really going crazy, because Muhammad is the role model for today, not the byproduct of the era. If slavery, if raping slaves is wrong today, it was just as wrong 1,000 years ago. So he could have stopped it. He could have stopped it 1,000 years ago, and yet he propagated in, I don't know how many, 13 or 14 Sahih Hadiths, go and enjoy raping female captives.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm telling you, this is like part of the era. You like armies go into places and they kill people and they rape them, and this is
they are not prophets. They are not role models for every person on this planet.
And it doesn't make it okay.
I mean, Aziz, I guess the bigger question is then, would you agree that Muhammad is not a moral example to follow in every aspect today?
Look, he is a moral person to follow, but I wouldn't tell you gentlemen to follow him.
But I'm asking you, though. I'm asking you, forget about us. Don't worry about us for the moment. Is he a moral example for you in every aspect, or only in ones that you choose to cherry pick that already agree with your sense of morality?
Well, the thing is, I know you guys read the same texts that I do, but you guys draw the conclusion that he's a horrible monster and so on and so forth. But when I read the same texts as you, I look at them with their historical context, and I can't condemn a historical figure for living in the 6th century. You understand what I'm trying to say?
Okay, let's say we granted you that. What I'm really asking you is is he a moral example for you, Aziz, to follow today in 2018 in every aspect, or in only the aspects that already agree with what you think is moral today?
Look, to me, he's a moral figure, but that doesn't justify me to rape and pillage my neighbor. You know, and I don't believe that he raped and pillaged his neighbor. I believe he went to war, and this is what warring armies and warring tribes did. This is a fact. It's a fact. You know, people can't sleep with it, and some people try to hide it. But for me, I'm okay with it. It doesn't affect me.
Okay, what I asked you though, and you either on purpose or by accident didn't really address the actual question, which was, do you think that Muhammad today is the perfect example to follow in every ethical or moral aspect, or only in some moral and ethical aspects today in 2018, if he were alive or if you were to follow him?
And look, to me, he is moral in every way. To me, he is. But that, like I said, that doesn't mean I go.
You are joking, right?
No, I'm not. To me, he is moral, but that doesn't mean I go and rape and pillage and enslave people. That doesn't mean that.
Second, what if I give you examples where it's clearly immoral? What if from hadith? There's plenty of hadith where you look at this man and go, any other man in history, if they did this, you would say it's immoral. But the minute Muhammad did it, it's moral. You can't criticize.
No, you can criticize him. You guys can do whatever you want.
Rob, one second. I'm sure Stops, me and Rob and James could give you enough hadith where if it was anybody else doing exactly the same thing, you would say, no, that's an immoral act. But when it comes down to Muhammad, he's moral.
Well, look, this is a challenge. This is a challenge. If you guys can bring up an event with the proper context and say, hey, this is immoral, you know, we have a topic for next week's show.
Okay, but
hang on. What would happen if we did?
Yeah, exactly.
What would happen if we did?
What do you mean? What would happen? I would have to agree with you, right? Wouldn't I have to agree with you?
What would happen?
Would you leave Islam?
No, I wouldn't. No, I
would. Would you condemn Muhammad? This is the question.
Huh?
Would you condemn Muhammad?
No, I wouldn't condemn Muhammad.
Okay, so what's the point then of bringing something immoral? What's the point?
Yeah.
Well, I'm putting the challenge to you guys if you can come up with something. But
I just did. What is the point in doing it if it's not going to change anything with you anyway?
Maybe it will change you guys.
Hang on. I can bring you tons of things which are immoral that Muhammad did. How is it going to change anything with me? I know tons of things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do you bring them with the proper context, or do you just bring them?
So you think that raping a woman in the proper context is okay?
I never said that. You said that.
Hang on. You said bring it up in the proper context. So are you saying that there is a context in which raping a woman is okay?
No, I wouldn't say raping a woman is okay, but, you know, it has happened.
Yeah, but you just said in the proper context. If I don't bring you the proper context, if I just bring you a command by Muhammad saying raping these women is okay. Don't worry about the prices. Don't worry about the prices on the slave market. Don't worry if they get pregnant. Don't worry about anything. Just enjoy raping them. What then?
I'm familiar with the hadith. I don't see what's wrong with it. I don't see what's wrong with it.
Wow.
I'll tell you what I see wrong with it. I see wrong with it when people say this is okay because Muhammad did it. You understand?
No.
Hang on a second. I can hear you there. Are you okay? So let's just get clear here. So I'm not sure it says the word rape, does it, Stops? But what it says is you can have sex with your slaves, and presumably what Stops means, unless he can correct me, and I'm happy for that. Presumably that means that the slaves don't have a choice. And most of us would agree that slaves, especially if their husbands have just been killed or whatever, are not necessarily going to give you consent to have sex. So in other words, based on that, it's rape. So if Muhammad says you can have sex with your slaves as opposed to the word rape, it's still rape because the slaves have no choice. They are owned, therefore they just have to have sex.
I think it might be helpful to like just leave aside the area where they have a little bit of wriggle room, because they could say, oh, but they might have consented. But we can show an area where there isn't any wriggle room at all, but it's kind of a lesser sin. Like if I try and screen share right now just to show the hadith, it's the one that Stops is referring to. Can you see this on my screen right now?
Yeah, you're sharing it. Just make it bigger, James.
So this is the reference, the
make
one
it
that
bigger,
Stops was
James.
referring
Just
to.
zoom in on it. Zoom in so
Zoom
everybody
in,
can see
so,
it. Command or Control plus. Yeah. There you go. Make it a bit bigger. Keep going. There you go. That's better. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So so in this hadith, which is from Sahih Muslim, it starts off with one of the companions relating an incident where kind of we went out with Allah's messenger, may peace be upon him, on the expedition to the Bil Mustalik tribe, and took captive some excellent Arab women, and we desired them, for we were suffering from the absence of our wives, but at the same time we also desired ransom for them. So we decided to have sexual intercourse with them by observing azl, which is coitus interruptus, withdrawing the male sexual organ before emission of semen to avoid conception. But we said we are doing an act whereas Allah's messenger is amongst us. Why not ask him? So we asked Allah's messenger, and he said, it doesn't matter if you do not do it, because every soul that is to be born before the day of resurrection will be born. Okay, so that to a normal person, like this is a clear example of war rape. But like someone might say, oh, but maybe they consented. It doesn't explicitly say that they were raped. However, like what I find that it would be much harder to for them to justify is how it says like that they took captive the women and they desired them because they were missing their wives. And so surely if if Muhammad's kind of the best kind of moral guide, he should have told them, given that they had wives, to be faithful to their wives, just because that you're away on an expedition of kind of a few weeks doesn't mean that you should kind of cheat on your wife without her permission and just have sex with someone else. So kind of surely a better moral guide for people would have said, think of your wives, don't have sex while married.
Now, when we look at it, the question we should ask: if the Muslims' wives were taken captive, would they be spared rape?
That's not the question we need to ask.
No, that is the question. I would argue that is the question we need to ask.
But just because someone else behaves in a bad way doesn't mean that you should. Kind of that you're implicitly admitting that it's bad to take people captive and rape them.
Yeah, I'm saying now it is bad to take people captive and rape them because somebody greater than myself set the standard for that. And we have Geneva Conventions that differentiate from civilian populations and professional military fighting each other. This is traditions of war, rules of engagement.
Abdel,
Right?
you're waffling. Abdel, you're waffling. You said, give me an example. Give me a real example. Give me a sahih, an authentic example. Here you have an authentic example. Are you going to condemn what Muhammad told his people, yes or no?
No, because you're not taking it into, no, because you guys are not being honest. You guys got to look at it from the byproduct of the time. If the Muslim women, because you have to give them that mercy, so to speak. If their women, wow. I'll make it better. If you were born in the 6th century, no, if you were born in the 6th century, that would be okay because that's the norm. Yeah, they're not okay from where we stand in life. From
I think the fact that Abdullah's admitting that it would be bad if we started practicing this today shows that he's kind of implicitly admitting that kind of Muhammad's and the Sahaba's conduct isn't the best possible conduct for all times and places, but he doesn't want to say those words because that would seem kind of sacrilegious to him. So I don't think we need to necessarily kind of, you know, bully him until we get the answer that we want, because, you know, he isn't the kind of Muslim that we need to kind of worry about. It's more the kind of Salafis who do think that, you know, this is the best possible conduct for all times and places, and, you know, have no qualms with that.
Yeah, I agree with you, and you know, this is what I was saying. Like, the people who say this is okay because it was done in the past. Many things were done in the past. You know, that doesn't mean that it's okay today. That's what I was trying to say.
I apologize for the dropout. When people get kicked out for some reason and they come back, they are automatically muted. So at the moment, you can't hear everybody. Rob is not here at the moment, so we can't activate it because I don't have administrator rights, so I cannot activate everybody. We're going to do that just now. Okay, we can hear Abdel. We can. Oh, Abdel is the only one we can hear. Abdel, what is your point? Do you have a reply to this?
Yes. Well, what I was trying to say is, it's easy for us to look back in time and condemn the annals of history, but that's because we are very fortunate in the era we live in, and yes, anybody that would try to, like the Salafis, they make the claim that we can do this because it's done. That, you know, that's their claim. That, you know, I never claimed that.
No. Is it your claim that this behavior is correct today? You are saying no, it is not correct today. Now we are asking, is your claim that this behavior is correct 1,000 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, it has always been correct 1,000 years ago.
Except not today.
Yes, because many things have happened.
What has happened? No, you can't, because nobody can hear you. This is the problem, because only us internal here can hear you. The rest can't, because you're not activated.
Am I the only one that's activated?
You're the only one who's activated because you were not chucked out.
Am I activated?
No.
Oh, whoops.
Okay, I'll
only
just
Abdul is activated. Only Abdul and me are activated, and Rob isn't here at the moment. He says he'll be back in 2 minutes, and he just needs to click on the button.
So my screen sharing to you guys, but not to YouTube.
Correct.
I see.
Oh, James, you also heard apparently.
Oh, okay, cool.
Just softly.
Oh, okay. That's fair.
Okay, Abdul, say again. This concept. What you are saying is that everything is correct in 1,000. Was correct 1,000 years ago, but it is not correct today. So what has happened in between?
Many things have happened. I mean, we've
we're pushing the boundaries of technology. We are exploiting resources we never thought we could exploit. We've advanced. We've liberated ourselves from the drudgery, so much mundane tasks because of technology. I mean, and on top of that, as a society, as a global society, the map has stayed the same, but we've shrunk. Many things have happened in the annals of time, and then there's a new, how you would say, a new standard in which we have to observe. I personally think it's a heresy, an Islamic heresy, to advocate, us abandoning these new norms.
Okay, what are they based on? You're saying a lot of things have happened. We are pushing the boundaries and blah, blah, blah. Okay, what is it based on? This is human development. So why has anything happened that would make rape of women correct 1,000 years ago?
I mean, excuse me for saying this, but I'm pretty sure rape, pillaging, and murdering was a way of life. I mean, this is what was understood to be the normal.
And this is exactly the point why we are having this discussion today, because we have decided it's immoral. So what this God commanded 1,000 years ago was immoral. Muhammad was immoral. And that is the whole point.
I would argue if God commanded a people not to pillage, not to rape, to be docile and submissive, I would argue that's immoral.
Okay, I can't argue any further. This is all I can handle.
All right, guys, is there anything else? I think we're coming to an end. Sorry, I stepped away for a few moments. I think a few people couldn't hear some people, but I've said that correct. Okay, I want to thank Michael so much. Michael, are you still there?
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much for your sharing some of your thoughts on this. I think it's a topic that will always remain a topic of discussion, especially between theists and non-theists. Obviously, theists will take their book as being a moral guide, i.e. a message from God, and non-theists will critique that book, and theists will critique the atheists and going, well, where do you get your morals from, type of thing. But as we've seen tonight, there are some people like Aziz that also have certain internal morals that appear not to follow the Qur'an necessarily. So I think we will all have our human morals, but it's certainly an interesting topic. But I think we've pretty much, it's 11:30 now my time here, so I think we've covered it. Aziz, if you've got a topic for next week, or if anybody else for that matter, Michael or anybody else has got a topic they'd like us to have as a main topic, because normally we'll have a main topic and then we can diverge into other things, feel free to let us know and we can look at discussing that.
I have an idea. What is the best way to de-radicalize the UK and the Muslim community?
Banning Islam.
It's exactly. It's very easy.
What's the solution?
Ban Islam.
I have a more practical solution.
That is very practical.
Banning Islam is very practical.
No. I have a better one. Cut all welfare checks.
How is that going to ban Islam?
No. If the UK would stop with its social programs, a whole bunch of Islamists will leave.
We don't know that.
I know that, most definitely. You have to be on welfare to consistently have these backwards ideas and isolate yourself from society and wait for a government check to keep. You have to have the government to subsidize your lifestyle.
And you're a Muslim saying that? Wow.
Yeah. Also, they need to stop giving welfare checks to single mothers and feminists, and maybe they'll.
That's a topic for a separate discussion, I think. Okay, guys, I want to thank you all. Stops, have you got a hadith of the day?
I had one just now before I started looking for Azul. What the hell?
If anybody,
Yes, got it.
an option that we could do, if those are interested, I need to hear from the chat. If people want to go to an after show, the live show will end. But if people want to join an after show to have a further discussion, where I would be able to send them the link, and you guys can go on. Myself and Stops won't be on. I don't know how long Michael will be on, but if other people want to join and continue this conversation or another one,
Time for bed for me.
Okay, time for bed. So 3 of us will be going. I don't know. Maybe Aziz wants to stay on for a while. And certainly if anybody else wants to, then I can provide you with a link and you can do so. So
just disable the
yes,
security function.
Yes, I've done that already.
Okay.
So if you want to join an after show, hit number 1 on the chat, or if you don't care or you're not interested, hit number 2. So I can see as Stops reads the hadith of the day here, and then we'll go into an after show if there's enough people that want to. As I say, I'll just get it started and then we will leave it. If you don't want to, then just hit 2 and we'll understand. That's fine.
Okay, Abu Dar said, Allah's Messenger said, when one of you stands in prayer, what definitely constitutes a barrier for him is an object placed in front of him of the same height as the back of a camel saddle. If it is not in front of him and of the same height as the back of a camel saddle, then some donkey or some woman passing or some black dog will cut off his prayer. I said, O Abu Dar, what is it that makes a black dog different from a red or yellow dog? He replied, O dear cousin, I asked Allah's Messenger the exact same question. He said that the black dog is a devil.
Of course. What's wrong with that?
There we go. So again, once again, I want to thank especially Michael for coming on as a guest and sharing some of his views on morals and ethics. As always, thanks to my co-host Stops. Thank you as well to Abel. I just want to make sure I pronounce this correctly. Abdel Aziz. Thank you so much.
Yeah, just Abdel is fine. Abdel is just fine.
Perfect. Abdel, perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you to all the viewers. We'll be back again next Friday. I may not be on, or I may be joining late, so Stops will hopefully co-host along with, we might have video vids in the house to keep Stops company for next week's show. So until then, I want to thank you all very much. We'll go into an after show. I will post a link in the chat. Myself, Stops, and Michael will probably exit very shortly thereafter or immediately. And those that want to continue a conversation are welcome to do so. So thank you again to everybody. Good night, and I will post a link in a moment.